speaking? We can't hear them if they are.
No, not yet. We haven't sort of turned on mics. Can you hear me now?
I can.
I'd like to start by moving the consent agenda. Before any comments or questions about that, do I have a second? Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, any comments or questions on the consent agenda? I would like to point out that the change order for the Driscoll School project is actually a credit for $19,800. Helen, do you want to explain what that's about?
It's just for, they were going to do some work on testing of windows, and they didn't have to do it. So,
Right.
all to the good.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda before we
And
vote?
occasionally we do get credits for things throughout on building projects.
Okay, seeing none, let's move to the vote. Jesse? Aye. Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
And we have another member remote, Suzanne, yeah.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Next, we have the student report. Welcome back, Kieran. It's great to see you again. And anyone who happened not to notice Kieran's op-ed in August for the Boston Globe should definitely check it out. There were dueling editorials about Biden's proposal to term limit Supreme Court justices. Very cool.
So Kieran, will we always, are you identical or not? We are. So we won't know who is here if the two of you switch
we might
up?
call like a switcher at the end of it. But just as I begin, I just want to preface my remarks by saying that this is my first official meeting as the student rep for the school committee, and I am beyond excited and very grateful to have this opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about what September has been thus far to students at BHS. So it's been an exciting time returning to school, returning from our summer breaks. The school year began September 3rd, 8 a.m. for ninth graders. The rest of us were fortunate to come in a little bit later at 10 a.m., so we did have that opportunity to sleep in. And all students had sort of advisory in the mornings and one class-wide assembly through the week. Where they would address specific class-wide concerns that they had. You know, I can tell you that as a senior, for example, our assembly addressed college, preparing for college, ensuring that we were still having a non-stressful student year as a senior, and really, you know, just kind of easing our way back into the school year after the summer break. And attached on the screen are the schedules that have been implemented for BHS students, which were developed by BHS administrators. So BHS currently has implemented a few new policies and continued some policies that they began last year on personal electronic devices as well as attendance. So what you see on the screen here is the tardy policy that BHS has been continuing with for the upcoming school year. So 4 tardies will result in a student detention that will be monitored by the teacher whose class they've been late to or tardy to 4 times. Really, as you can see, the progression of the punishments for being tardy get worse and worse. You know, so if any students are watching, don't be late 4 times because you may wind up in a detention. But BHS is also implementing this year left to class and super tardy policies. So teachers right now have the ability to mark students absent, present, tardy in terms of their attendance. But BHS is also trying to implement 2 new features of attendance. One is called left class and one is called super tardy. So if a student arrives to class more than 9 minutes late, they are marked as a super tardy, which for all intents and purposes is the same as an absence. And teachers can also mark students as left class if they have left the class, you know, to use the bathroom per se, or just to walk around the school for more than 10 minutes. So these are policies that BHS is, you know, trying out this year. They were not implemented last year. But, you know, we're going to see how this does. I can tell you that, you know, I've already had some friends who have had a little bit of run-ins with these new policies. But, for the most part, I think that, students have adapted to them and are, beginning to live with them in their high school experience. The new personal electronic device policy is one that's being continued from last year, which is a similar progression as the attendance policy that BHS has, except that many students are now sort of learning in classrooms where teachers implemented phone caddies. I can tell you that last year I had no teacher who, had a phone caddy, like a little cubby where we would put our phones at the beginning of the day. That's almost virtually widespread now. I think most of my teachers, if not all, have some sort of method by which that they can collect their phones or collect our phones at the beginning of class. And again, the progression is similar, where a fourth violation will result in an email home to parents, as well as an email to a student's administrators, deans, guidance counselors, where teachers will work with students to try and make plans to sort of address the continued use of personal electronic devices. It's worth noting that personal electronics, they typically mean phones, Apple Watches. In some cases, they can mean computers if they're not authorized during class time. So for example, if a teacher is, giving notes to students are expected to write that down without their computer, they may assign a warning if a student has their computer out and is doing non-class related activities on it. And a little bit on a happier note, on Wednesday, the BHS student body kind of celebrated its annual club fair. There was I want to say, record turnout in the number of student organizations, student clubs that were at the club fair this year that were promoting themselves. We had more than 140 different student organizations that really truly reflect sort of the rich diversity that the student body has to offer. We saw activities ranging from activist activities. We saw ethnically related clubs such as the Latinx Club, which is shown on the screen here. We saw advocacy clubs, activism clubs, that's the Students for Nuclear Disarmament, among others. We saw sort of career-oriented clubs. I, for example, captained the mock trial team. So again, if any students are watching and have not signed up for the mock trial team, we would love to have you. Please take those words seriously. But really, they kind of reflect just the sort of panoply of different experiences that BHS students have. And sort of, again, the rich, kind of diversity that BHS students bring, in their personal lives, what they bring to BHS. Many different clubs this year, 140 came out, and, BHS students really came out in full force to kind of support, to kind of sign up, to promote their own clubs. And that was, particularly noteworthy, given that I think last year there were just about 60 clubs that came to the club fair. So this was a notable increase in the number of students that turned out. And, it's really, I think, a good thing for BHS going forward that, we have so many students who are taking leadership, who are taking initiative, to kind of make change that they want to see at the high school and to, offer support to students at the high school. But it's a really, really great thing that we have so many students who are coming out, being at the club fair, and really just expressing what they want to see at the high school. And so that is it for my student report. It continues to be a busy month in September, and I'm very excited to see what the rest of the month has in store for BHS.
All right, thanks very much, Kieran. It's great to have you this year. And any comments or questions for Kieran?
I could.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea for the tardy policy. However, to get from the fourth floor of 22 Tappan to the fourth floor,
Yeah.
how long does that take, and how long do you have between classes?
So for me at least, so we have 7 minutes between periods. I think that the times in which I've had to travel from the fourth floor of the Tappan to the fourth floor of the high school, it's not always often because the fourth floor of the high school is reserved for SWS.
I know that.
But I think that, for me, the times that I've had to do it, it has certainly taken all 7 minutes, if not more.
Yeah. That's why
Yeah, so, students or teachers have discretion, over the tardy policy. So I think on a case-by-case basis, if a student comes to them and says, I have to travel all the way from the fourth floor of the Tappan building to the fourth
Even
floor
the
of
fourth floor of the UAB to the fourth.
Exactly. I mean, I think that teachers will use their discretion, and make distinctions sort of between, students who have to commute, between buildings versus students who are kind of just, languishing in the hallways and come a little bit late to class because as a result.
Great.
Yes, go ahead, Helen.
Could you share the list of the 140 clubs with us?
Yes.
Not, just
Yeah.
by email.
Yeah, so I can definitely share that with you guys. It's also available on the BHS Brookline K-12 25 website. So I think that Mr. Meyer, our head of school, has also recently listed it there. But I can definitely email you guys that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
Thanks for that. It's really great to meet you, Karen. I just wanted to ask you more generally. So I've been here this is my 4th year. We've had 2 really wonderful student reps so far. I'm expecting you'll be the 3rd. No pressure. But I'm just wondering if there are any particular topics that you're looking forward to covering, or if there's any ways of going about representing the student body that you're excited about undertaking as a student rep.
I mean, yeah, so I think that, I was particularly motivated, to run for the student rep position because of really, like you mentioned, the wonderful job that we've had from Claire a few years back, from Laura last year and the year before. And so, just kind of seeing how a student could actually advocate for other students to, position of power like the school committee, which is quite different than, for example, the VHS student government, the VHS student council. So I think that I was really just motivated to, kind of be an advocate for students to be able and to, feel comfortable coming to me, saying like, hey, I have a concern. I've noticed, for example, I remember last year we had problems with the elevator. So students with, physical disabilities were having trouble getting up to the 4th floor in many cases or other floors. And so, kind of just being that person that people can go to, that people can feel comfortable going to, with deeply personal concerns and saying, I trust you to represent me and my interests to the school committee. And so I think that that's really, what I have gotten out of it so far, what I definitely want to get out of it so far. In terms of topics that I'd like to see addressed, I'm kind of just playing it by ear almost, seeing, what comes before the school committee. I think, if the last year taught us anything, it's that, unforeseeable events, may come to dominate an educational experience. And so, I am, game for whatever, comes the school committee's way. And, always trying to solicit, student feedback, student perspectives on any issues that come before the school committee. That's always going to be my #1 priority.
And if any remote members have questions or comments, please just speak up because I can't see all of your hands at the moment. All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Kieran. I look forward to many more reports from you this year. Next, we have the superintendent's report, and for this, we've blocked off a whole hour because there are 2 very weighty pieces here. First is the introduction of new staff, and the second is an update on school opening.
Good evening, Brookline. It's great to be with you tonight. I think the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to go through the slide deck, introduce all the new staff members, and then those that are present with us, I'll call them to make any remarks and then allow the committee to engage with them that way. I think that's how we'll try to proceed. All right, well, with that, the first up, we want to introduce to the community Mr. Jose Albuquerque as our new Director of Operations. Joe brings over a decade of experience in operations and facilities management, fiscal administration, financial analysis, staff management, workflow optimization, project management, and operational and capital budgeting. Joe holds a master's in business administration from Suffolk University and a bachelor's in civil engineering from Northeastern. Welcome, Joe. Next up, we have Sarah Ladner-Apollo. This is a change in position for her. Sarah has been with BHS Winthrop House for 14 years, having served as a math teacher for 11 years before moving into the role of program coordinator. In the last 3 years, Sarah has led the move of Winthrop House onto the BHS campus and continues to navigate the adolescents' mental health crisis. As director, she will help establish a pilot middle school for Winthrop House program at Driscoll. Next up, this is a change in position, Dr. Brianna Brown as a high school science curriculum coordinator. Dr. Brown has been teaching biology and AP Environmental Science at BHS since 2010. She has previously taught undergraduates at BU and LaSalle University. Dr. Brown has developed several new science courses for BHS, serves on the BHS legislature, and is a member of the BHS Student Intervention Team. Next up, we welcome Mr. Alvin Cooper as our Director of Human Resources. Alvin brings 30 years of educational leadership, staff development, and human resources experience. He has served as Executive Director of Human Resources, Assistant Principal, and Classroom Teacher. He worked with the Boston Public Schools as a Senior Recruitment Manager, overseeing recruitment, hiring, and support for 137 schools at that time, school leaders, and central office staff. Next up, this is a change in title. We welcome Margaret Eberhardt as the principal. She held the title interim principal for 2 years, and so she's now been named principal of BEEP. She has been an early childhood educator for 25 plus years. This year will be her 7th year working at BEEP. A graduate of Teachers College and St. Lawrence University, Margaret holds a master's in curriculum and instruction and a BS in biology. She has served on the Milton School Committee for 6 years and was a member and president of the Milton Foundation for Education. Next up, this is an introduction to the community because Cassandra Galanauskas has been with us this past school year, but she wasn't on board at the time of our beginning of the year. Cassandra brings over a decade of experience in administrative support and has demonstrated her expertise across various sectors, including nonprofit, higher education, and private. Experienced in improving operational efficiency, project coordination, and managing executive communications, Cassandra helps coordinate the department's initiatives in support of the district's growth, and she is the executive assistant for the Office of Administration and Finance. Next up, we have Mr. Neil Gupta, again, a name that we should be familiar with. Neil has been with us a portion of last year. He brings 5 years of experience in marketing, content creation, and communications across various sectors. Originally from Mumbai, India, he has lived in Boston for the last 3 years. He completed his master's degree in digital media management from Northeastern University last year, where he also worked as a student employee in multiple marketing and communications roles. Next up, a name, again, and face you're familiar with, is Christina Hernandez, who's our Assistant Director of Educational Equity. Christina comes with much experience working with students of historically marginalized backgrounds and multilingual learners, besides leading DEIB initiatives at the James W. Hennigan K-8 School in Boston. She has taught kindergarten students in the Sheltered English Immersion Program and worked as an ESL, or an English as a Second Language specialist. Again, Christy's been doing great work here in the district as well. Diane Johnson, again, a name that you should be familiar with as our Director of Finance. Diane has been serving public education since 2004 in various capacities of school business administration. She has had previous financial experience at the WGBH Educational Foundation. Diane is an active member of the Massachusetts Association of Business Officials, where she served on the committee that worked to increase state aid to school districts. New to us is Meg McCullough as a registration and enrollment specialist. Meg has a BA in English and Communications from Tulane University and a master's in teaching English as a second language and applied linguistics from Iowa State University. She has taught English as a second language for 10 years around the world and in the Boston area. Most recently, she has worked as a graduate programs administrator at Tufts University. Next up is Melvin Merlos, again, a name some of us may be familiar with as our employee engagement specialist. Melvin brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in the human resources and talent acquisition space. He specializes in creating a seamless onboarding experience, checking in at various points to identify areas to improve, supporting existing employees with lane changes and exit interviews, among other things. Kelsey Nash is our new office manager in the Office of Student Services. Kelsey has donned many hats while working at the PSB for the last 7 years. She started out in the Sperber Education Center working with the K-8 Science and World Language departments. This was followed by a stint in the Unified Arts Building at BHS, and for the past 4 years, she has supported the K-12 Visual Arts career in tech ed and nursing over at the high school. And Kelsey joined us shortly after Lunder retired last year. Ashley O'Sullivan is our head clerk for grants. Ashley has had a strong focus on community throughout her career. She started off in the private sector with experience in property management and marketing, and has since transitioned to the public sector at the town of Brookline. She has worked in the Central Administration Office for the DPW, and more recently as a finance assistant in the Treasurer's Office. So we welcome Ashley to the Public Schools of Brookline. Christina Penticus, again, is a name that some of us may be familiar with. She started last year as well. Christina brings 7 years of experience in talent acquisition. Her role is to attract new talent and guide them through the interview and onboarding processes. Having recently transitioned from the private to the public sector, she is excited to apply her skills and knowledge and making a positive impact at the public schools of Brookline. Tamara Gonzalez is our new executive assistant in Metco. Originally from New York City, Tammy is a proud first-generation Dominican American and Spanish speaker. She has been a teacher, a para for Boston Public Schools, as well as the public schools of Brookline. As a Prep 9 alum, Metco's mission statement is very near and dear to her heart. Kareem Azeb is our BHS Metco coordinator. Born in Alexandria, Egypt, but raised in Brooklyn, Kareem is a graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst with a dual bachelor's degree in political science and history and a minor in Black Studies, and has a master's degree from Boston University School of Education. He is currently pursuing a master's degree in principal licensure in educational leadership at Clark Atlanta University. Ellen Nyland is new to the PSB. She is the new executive chef. Ellen comes to PSB with 10 years of experience as a chef and food service director in school meals. Prior to working in school meals services, she has worked as a chef in healthcare, several restaurants, catering, and as a private chef. She specializes in scratch cooking, student engagement, local procurement, and farm to school. Irvlet Perrin is our new food services coordinator. He comes to PSB with over 20 years of experience in the food services industry. From 2015 to 2024, he served as a kitchen manager, assistant director, and eventually director of food and nutrition services at Salem Public Schools. And last but not least, we introduce Rachel Cragen. Again, this is a new role for her. She was interim early childhood program coordinator, and she has now been made, the title of interim has been removed from her. Rachel has began her career in PSB in 2006 as a special educator at BEEP. In 2022, she accepted a new position as the interim childhood program coordinator, which transitioned into a permanent role in 2024. Rachel has a degree in social justice from UMass Amherst and 2 master's degrees, one in special education from Cambridge College and the other in organizational management from Endicott College. And with that is our introduction, our slate of new and returning folks to PSB. And I see we have a few of them online with us, so I'm going to offer them the opportunity to make 1 minute or less remarks, because we have a lot of them, and then allow the committee. So I'll have everyone go through, and then we'll have the committee engage with them. So first up, let's go with Now my screen is moving. Irvlette, let's go with you, Mr. Perrin. Irv, we can't hear you. Not yet. Let's try. We'll come back to you, Irv. Joe, let's try you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you so much for a warm welcome since I've started from the school committee leadership and the school community as a whole. I'm very excited to be the director of operations and working closely and will be collaborating with all of you sometime down the line on projects, initiatives to grow the district and on an operations, facilities, transportation services perspective. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Next up, Christy. Let's go to you, Christy Hernandez.
Hi, everyone. I've had the pleasure of working with, I think, everybody on the committee, yes, starting last year, and I'm excited to keep doing so this year. I know we are all here to serve kids to the best of our abilities, and I'm really excited to pursue that work together.
Thank you, Christy. Meg?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. I started in April, and it's been a really great experience so far, learning a lot, and I've really appreciated all of the help and collaboration at PSB, and feeling very excited to have made it through my first round of school registration over the summer.
Awesome. Thank you. Margaret, who's not new to this group at all. Margaret, we can't hear you.
Yes. Hi, good
There
evening,
you go.
everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I want to thank you for offering me the opportunity to be the permanent principal of the Brookline Early Education Program. I've been here in different roles for the last 7 years, so I feel a little odd talking, but I'm super excited about all that's happening in Beepland. Rachel, Erin, and I are having a wonderful time, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you as we move to a school day program in Beep and to continue the wonderful work of special education and inclusion for children. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next up, Neil.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. I've been at PSB for almost a year now, and it's been wonderful working with individuals who are so passionate, so dedicated about education. And just last weekend, I had the opportunity of meeting a few of you on the school committee at Brookline Day. I look forward to working with you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Next up, Ashley.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited to join the public schools of Brookline. I started in May. Although I'm not new to Brookline, I have previously worked in the treasurer's office. I'm just excited to start and expand my career with the public schools of Brookline in the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Thank you. Brianna.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm excited to be in this new role, supporting my colleagues with in the hard work that they do. And I'm really excited to get into their classrooms and get out of my biology bubble and see what's happening with chemistry and physics. So I'm looking forward to the year. Thank you.
Awesome. Rachel.
Hi, thanks for having me. So excited to be permanent, mostly because it means Margaret's permanent. So I've had a great 2 years learning underneath her incredible leadership. We have had a huge transition to a full school day program that we are incredibly proud of. And we are doing a great job, if I may say so myself. The teachers are working out all the scheduling changes. Food services has been phenomenal, supporting us and delivering meals and breakfasts. The building and facilities folks that helped us move and secure spaces and classrooms. It's just been such an enormous couple years and a huge team effort, and it has been really exciting to be a part of it. So I appreciate all of the support from the school committee in getting this done. And I'm looking forward to more big things in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ervlet, we're going to try you again. We still can't hear you, Mr. Perrin. Say that again.
No, his mic isn't muted.
Yeah, but it could be, could have it selected.
Oh, do you have your microphone on your computer? Yeah, I do that sometimes where I turn it off and I'm wondering why nobody can hear me.
Get a mulligan?
I'm telling you. Well, let's do this.
Whoop. Oh,
Oh, I can't do any messaging here.
well, maybe while he's trying, we can.
Yeah. So why don't we start with, we'll pass it back to you, Andy, to the committee. And Irv, we're going to try to figure something out with you.
Yeah. Okay. Sarah?
Would this be an opportunity where we could hear where BEEP is currently located, the different locations?
Gladly. So we're at Driscoll, we're at FRR, we are at Hayes, Runkle, we are at Temple Obai Shalom on Beacon Street, which we call Beep on Beacon. And we are at Temple Emeth in South Brookline, which is where we call Beep at Putterham. What did I miss, Margaret? Oh, and the Lynch Center, of course, our heart and soul, the Lynch Center.
Thank you.
Of course.
Helen?
So I want to welcome all of you to Brookline, for those who are new and for those who have been promoted. I'm so happy to see so many people who have been in the system and have a pathway to moving. Some of you may think it's up, some of you may not think it's up, but it is an advancement in your career, and it's nice that we can do that in Brookline, and thank you all for being here. Meg, can I ask you one question? Is Megan still here? Or has Megan
Yes,
left?
she is. Yep.
Oh, okay, I just wasn't sure, that's why. It's interesting, so how do you differentiate between, is it Megan, basically?
Yes. Yeah. It makes it very confusing for people calling to talk to us.
I would imagine. But welcome.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Welcome, everyone. It's great to see some people I've known already, and welcome to everyone who I haven't met so far. I just have a question for Neil. Can you say a little bit more about your role? Is this a role that was previously filled, or is this maybe this is a question for you, Dr. Guillory? Is this a redefined role, or is this filling a role that was previously vacated?
Yeah, previously. This was a role that was previously vacated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome, Neil. Thank you. That was my question.
Ervlet, can you speak to us now? You're still showing muted on our end.
Hi, everyone. Sorry.
Hey, now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you.
Well, I'm really good to be part of this team. From day one, I've been having a lot of support from everybody. We've been welcoming us. I think it's been everybody made it easy with all your satellite kitchen starting. So I'm really happy to be with this team.
Well, Mr. Perrin, we're gonna give you another chance to come back and join us and give you a do-over. so that we can really meet you as well, because your audio, we can barely make it out, but we can hear part of it. So again, welcome.
All right.
Sorry, do any other school committee members have questions or comments for our new staff? I see none. So yeah, again, hearty welcomes to all of you. It's great to see you and great to have you here.
Thank you. So we'll continue with our theme, and I think Karan brought it in. It's been a busy start to the school year. Our theme for the year is focused on belonging, and we are drawing on the theme, a place where we all belong. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You want to be where everyone knows your name. Greetings, PSB community. Welcome to the 24-25 school year. I have thoroughly enjoyed spending time at all the schools, opening events the past 2 weeks, the staff meetings, the department meetings, the welcome session, and the opening days. As I enter into the 4th year of the role of superintendent here in Brookline, I'm excited about the powerful and transformative work we do together. As I step into this new year, I want to help us focus intently on our strategic goals for the year, which are year 1 of our strategic plan, which has 5 broad areas: teaching and learning, community and connections, culture and climate, management and capacity building, and governance. Our first priority is to enhance academic excellence. We must continue to push the boundaries of what students can achieve by providing them with the tools, resources, and opportunities they need to excel. This means fostering and nurturing a culture of innovation in our schools, as well as encouraging creative teaching practices and embracing the latest technologies that can enrich learning. It also means staying true to the fundamentals, ensuring that every child has a strong foundation in literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking. We must also commit to to equity and inclusion in everything we do. Our schools must be safe, welcoming, and supportive environments for every student, every staff member, and every community member, regardless of their background, ability, or circumstances. This requires us to be proactive in identifying and dismantling barriers to success, whether they are academic, social, or emotional. There's another critical element that underpins all of our work, and that's a culture of care and respect. It is not enough for us to strive for academic success and equity. We must do so in environments where everyone feels valued, everyone feels supported, and everyone feels respected. We must also acknowledge the challenges that inevitably lie ahead. Challenges are not a sign of failure. They are opportunities for growth and learning. They test our resolve, they push us to think critically, and ultimately, they make us stronger as a district. We know this year will bring its share of obstacles, and we will address them with a mindset of collaboration and problem solving. Thank you to all of our families. Thank you to all of our staff for choosing Team Brookline. We share with the staff, whether this is your first year or your 41st year, the work that you do as educators, as staff in our system is incredible, and the impact that you have cannot be understated. The heart and soul of our district lie in the dedication, passion, and expertise that our staff bring to their roles every day. We call them the architects of possibility. Every interaction they have with students allows them to succeed and in the present and prepares them for the future. Let us embrace the responsibilities we have. I told a little story to staff at the beginning in my opening remarks that each year my son gives me a gift before the first day of school. And this year he gave me a gyroscope. So I told a story about the importance of our educators and staff being a stable force for our students. And so I won't go into that detail with you, but it had meaning for our staff at the time. So sometimes you want to go where everyone knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You want to be where everybody knows your name. Let's make this year one of growth, one of joy and success together. With our shared vision, collective efforts, and unwavering commitment, there is no limit to what we can achieve. And with that, in the spirit of everyone knowing your name, we want to take this time to remember our own Mr. Mike D'Onofrio. We are deeply saddened by the sudden loss of our very own. Mike was one who knew everyone's name, and his passion that he brought to us will certainly be missed. Mike worked with the PSB for over 16 years, first as the Director of Administrative Services, later as a finance manager for the Office of Student Services. In 2023, he moved over to the town's finance department of public safety to assume the role of finance manager. But Mike did not turn his back on PSB. He continued to be over here just as much as he was over there. And so to all of those who work with Mike, we remember him as warm, kind, and a reliable person. Again, he will truly be missed. I want to also share that we have, again, been very busy with quite a bit of work. Our Office of Educational Equity and Student Services has drafted a beta version of a discrimination protocol that we've shared out with principals and a small group of parents as well, and we'll continue having our team work through and vet that and modify that, continue to improve that so that when incidents of discrimination do occur, we are responding to them in a way that's consistent across the organization, but also is individualized to meet the various needs of the individuals that are impacted there. So we'll continue to work on that, and we'll share that or bring that up at an appropriate subcommittee when ready there. I want to thank the I think it's Amarjet at the high school that reached out to me at the beginning of the year to remind me about Diwali. So I did do a calendar update and correction. We did elevate Diwali to Category 2. We've shared that out with staff, and that'll be going back out to families tomorrow. But that is an update in the system that we've elevated Diwali to Category 2, and that was as a result of the presentation that our students did with us last year about the importance and significance of that. We want to share from the Office of Administration Finance. You've heard and the appreciation for the staff and the work that our operations team has done, getting Beep moved to its location, getting Pierce moved to its location, getting all of our buildings ready for the start of school year. The town has done a fabulous job of partnering with us. And so with that, we've also had our human resources team up to speed, and that's been a sigh of relief, I know, for Dr. Givens, but also for our entire organization, because we've been able to make some great gains this year. So we're very excited to share with you that in addition to our summer hires and additional assignments, this year's hiring season, we hired 125 new employees. That's from July 1 to September, with a September 1 start date. Our overall fill rate as of September 3rd, I believe, Dr. Givens, was 96.55. So again, we're now getting to a point where we're going to be able to regularly share metrics about the work that we're doing in the organization. The majority of these openings that still remain are para positions, and 20 of the positions that are open right now, there were 50, and it changes each day, but 20 of those 50 were due to late resignations, meaning that it would have been a much smaller number had we not gotten late resignations. Our recruiting and hiring and onboarding re-engineering efforts resulted in a significant improvement in our candidate pools, as well as a significant reduction in our turnaround time, meaning offer letter to start date, and employee experience. We introduced our redesign in January, and the start of the hiring season since then All PSB new employees have enjoyed a more personalized, light lift experience from the application process to their starting at PSB or sitting in a seat. And I went over, had the opportunity with the senior team to go over to our new teacher orientation, and there again was a significant shift that folks were getting their computers, their badges, a customized packet with a map of the school. They were meeting individuals from the school, so our new folks coming in are having a very positive experience as they're entering the district.
Can I just ask a question on that? How does the 125 figure compare with years past?
Susan, do you have any intel on that? I mean, it's. Yeah, but
Okay.
we can look and see. Our quantitative results, we've reduced our hiring process from a 14 to 28 turnaround, 14 to 28 days down to 3 days to 2 weeks. So we're really making some headways there. And anecdotally, new employees expressed that they felt welcomed and supported throughout the process, and their positive energy and readiness was observed during their orientations. Of that 125 new employees by gender, 77% are female, 4% left it blank, 17% are male, and 2% are non-binary. Our new employees by race, 66% identified as white, 13% identified as Black or African American, 9% identified as Asian, and 12% identified as Latinx. When we look at and 10 of the new hires did not select a category, did not respond there. When we look at our pre-K enrollment by grade as of September 3rd, and this is all in, meaning our 18 to 21-year-olds as well as our out-of-district numbers, we're looking at about 7,200 students at this juncture. But again, there's still a lot of movement, and Meg and Megan will tell you that it's not settled by any shape, form, or fashion. But Dr. Givens did give us some preliminary information that our enrollments are a little higher than the Cropper-McKibben, as well as by about 45 students and higher by 57 students from the estimate that we did internally for January for budget planning. Our BEEP enrollment right now is slightly down, but we know that our BEEP grows over the course of the year. Our kindergarten is slightly lower, again, by 8 students than what we planned for. And our grade 1 through 8 enrollment is higher than the estimate that we used in January for budget by 63 students. And our BHS and 18 to 21-year-old students is up by 45 students over what we were projecting there. So right now, pre-K through grade 8, numbers are all within the guidelines, but we are seeing some sections in some schools that are right at the guideline now. And I think that will conclude my opening remarks.
All right. Now, thank you, Dr. Guillory, for that presentation that was full of very interesting information. And thank you also for the tribute to Mike D'Onofrio, who will be missed hugely by anybody who had anything to do with PSB, certainly including me. So does any school committee member have some remarks or questions they'd like to make?
And after this portion, new staff, if you want to drop off, some of these questions may be for you, like Margaret and Rachel, if you're still here. But other than that, I think you all can drop off.
Okay, Carolyn.
Thanks, Andy. I'll basically sort of second your thanks to Dr. Guillory. That was super interesting, really like the kind of information that I'm interested in for kicking off the school year. Little snapshot. I love this fill rate metric. So thank you, Dr. Givens, for all that you continue to do also. And the hiring information, really interesting. I loved your quotes, Dr. Guillory. I wrote down the part of that, our troubles are all the same. I really love the idea of unity, and I feel like that particular aspect of that quote is directionally there. The more that we share and come together, I think the healthier we all are. And Mike D'Onofrio was a father at the Baker School where my children also went, and happens to live close to the neighborhood. And I didn't know him very well, but we have very close friends in common. And if you didn't know him, it's really difficult to describe how unique and special he was. He really was a person who brought a sort of calm joy everywhere he went, and it's just absolutely shocking and stunning that he passed suddenly. So thank you for acknowledging that also.
Helen?
Yeah, I too appreciate you taking time to talk about Mike. I was here when he was first hired and have saw him grow throughout his experience here in the public schools of Brookline. He was always there with a smile, and he will be missed. You know, it's really sad. So thank you for doing that. I had one question about your report. So we oftentimes have teachers who go out for a year and we hire for them. I know you said there were 125 new hires, but I'm wondering, that's not 125 new positions, correct? So maybe we can just sort of ferret out how many are replacements for people who were versus. And some retired, yeah.
Some retired, exactly. We didn't have a ton of retirements this year.
No?
The majority of them are just people migrating out for a variety of reasons. Can be commute is a tough thing to get here to Brookline, so I think that influences some people's decision to stay or go. We will be putting together some exit survey information and working on our exiting process next year. This last year, the focus was really on recruitment and retention. We will continue with our efforts in that regard, but we'll also start to build the systems for exiting so we can get some really good data on that. And then we'll be able to share, exit information, have a better sense of what's causing that. So I'll have more to report in the years ahead.
And for those watching outside the room, that was Dr. Gibbons, our Deputy Superintendent for Administration and Finance.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you both.
Any other members like to comment or ask a question? If you're at home, if you're remote, just speak up because I can't see the thumbnails right now.
Andy, this is Mariah.
Hi, Mariah.
Hi. Might I ask Susan Gibbons a question?
You might. She's coming to the podium right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm stalling to give her a moment. So my question, Susan, is, and maybe you're the right person, maybe not to answer this. Do you know what % of our overall staff 125 is? And do you feel that that's a good, like a healthy level of turnover, too high? Do you know?
That's a great question. I don't know whether it is too high for Brookline. And I think that's some of the information I'm hoping we can gather so that we can compare year over year. I don't have good data from last year or prior years to be able to see if this was typical or if this was, atypical for Brookline. I can say that what I feel good about is when I look at the fill rate and I look at what we were unable to fill in time for the school year, that the only teaching positions we weren't able to fill were really related to not having pools of candidates that were qualified. And so in the areas, for example, of world language, getting any French teachers, not just a problem for us, they're just not there. Also in the Office of Student Services, we have some openings there. Again, there's not a huge population of people out there that have certain certifications. And so OSS and related services is always tough. So OT, speech, things like that. And we've had a history, and that's not just in Brookline, that's like an industry issue. Also ELE. So we have, as I was looking at comps from the state website, we have the highest population of English language learners from any of our comps in the area. And at the same time, there isn't a huge pool of candidates that are qualified to support those students. And so those are kind of pain points. They're not just our pain points, but they're pain points broadly. I can say that last year we opened with many more vacancies than we did this year. And so one of the things that we did was re-engineer the entire process for recruit and hire so that we were on cycle for hiring. There's 5 hiring cycles when you're in schools, and if you can hit those, then you're getting talent, and then you're also creating a really efficient system for hiring. Then you're able to recruit and hire in a really timely fashion, get people off the market. So I feel like the quality of our candidates, because our pools were much greater this year and better this year than they were in the past, also led to us being able to fill positions timely and early. Our onboarding process, we completely revamped that so that we were doing a lot of the onboarding right after we did the offer. We had people start doing their onboarding, not waiting until 2 days before school starts and doing all of that at once. And what that does is it's like putting the ring on. We say we would like to have you, they accept, but then they take action to start to become an employee. And I have found over the course of my career that when you're able to get that kind of a commitment where they're actually engaging with the school district, that they show up. You don't have as many people turning away because they haven't done their paperwork and things like that. So a lot of work, and we feel really good about, and we have a distance to travel, but we made a lot of progress in that regard. So that doesn't entirely answer your question, but it does. It is my insight into how we have fared better this year as we start the year than we had in the past. But I don't know the percentage number. I'll look into that and see if I can't get you something moving forward.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you and the entire HR team for what sounds like an amazing amount of work to get that beginning of the year, the hiring season and beginning of the year off to such a great start.
All right. Next up, we have public comment. So this year, I'd like to align our practice at public comment with the way the select board does this. So as before, right, every speaker gets 3 minutes. The change would be that after 15 minutes, we would move on to the rest of our agenda, and any remaining public comment occurs at the end of the meeting. This is to allow us to keep to our agenda, and it's really to respect the time of staff and others who need to join us at particular times to discuss particular agenda items. As before, people are welcome to email the committee, and those emails are read very attentively. That's how I'd like to run public comment this year. It's not an issue tonight because we only have one person signed up, and that's Ms. Carrie Goldberg.
Wait, I'm sorry, Andy. Andy, so
Yeah.
we're restricting the initial public comments to 5?
That'd be, yeah, assuming that they all take their full 3 minutes, right? But after 15 minutes, we would sort of hold the rest until the end of the meeting. All right, so this is Ms. Carrie Goldberg.
So I'm
The
Carrie
floor is
Goldberg.
yours. Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to update you again on the public records request that I filed almost a year ago now, seeking emails related to the messaging by Superintendent Guillory after the October 7th massacre. What you have before you is the entirety of the district's response to my public records request. Do you think that that is the entirety of the emails that came and went from Superintendent Guillory during that week after October 7th? I have reason to think it's not. So I've continue to pursue this request. The state supervisor of records has already determined twice now that the town is not complying with the law in relation to my request. And I've now appealed for a third time, and I've suggested it's time to refer this matter to the Attorney General. Now, I think you all probably were copied on Town Council Joe Callanan's 1,200-word email to the supervisor of records, and I would never actually expect you to read it. But the bottom line here is that the town has produced only that one email with, as you can see, all the names blacked out, and and all it says, as you can see, is that there's a draft of a Google Doc, so it has completely no content basically at all. The town has not given a justification for blacking out the names, and it's claiming that this email is the only one which would be responsive to my request, which we know is untrue because some email senders have shared some of their messages with me, and the Brookline News has even reported on them. So I asked a friend of mine who's a lawyer if this level of resistance to a public records request was normal, and he said, the big question here is, what are they hiding? And I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm thinking more and more that the district wouldn't resist this hard if it weren't something pretty bad, which just magnifies the concern that prompted this request in the first place. I know that the public records law can be quite a pain in the neck for public employees, but if you talk to people from other municipalities, it's a really normal practice to have to hit forward, forward, forward on a bunch of emails in response. So why hasn't that happened in this case? And I'd like to emphasize, this is a normal request. It's a single, modest request that asks for a very limited period of public employee emails that are subject legally to these requests. So I was reading the guidelines for public comment, and I saw that if the chair chooses, they can request an answer to a question if they deem it expeditious. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to do it, but I wish you would just ask the superintendent here and now or sometime soon, but in public, why in the world are you not just acceding to this legitimate, legal public records request? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Yeah, so as you know, the practice of the committee is that we listen very carefully to public comment, but we don't react on the spot. So I think we'd better keep to that. You've certainly given the committee and the superintendent a lot to think about, but for now, let's leave it where it is. Thank you. All right, thanks. So our next item is presentation and discussions of current issues. And here, before we get started, I'd like to reintroduce a practice that Suzanne had in place a couple of years ago during the pandemic when she was our chair. And this was really to make sure that all members had a chance to speak. And so what I'd like to do and what Suzanne had done in the past was that before anybody speaks a second time, everybody who wants to speak will get at least one chance. So we'll just make a conscious effort to call on everybody who wants to be called on before anybody speaks a second time. And when it is your turn, if you could sort of ask one question or sort of make one point, and of course, if there's an immediate follow-up, that's fine. But the idea would be to sort of keep it to one train of thought as long as there are others waiting who haven't had a chance to speak yet. All right. All right, so we have two items under presentations and discussions of current issues. There's the FY26 budget development calendar and Dr. Guillory's presentation of some draft goals and focus indicators for the evaluation. So let's go to the budget development calendar. Mariah and Susan, over to you.
Thank you. Susan, are you going to take this or do you want me to?
She says she doesn't have it in front of her, so you
Okay.
can.
Betsy, do you mind pulling it up on the screen? Thank you. See, you're already ahead of me. So at the August 21st meeting of the Finance Subcommittee, the Finance Subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend the 5 dates that you see bulleted at the top of this document. The rest of this document is our working calendar for the year for all of our meetings, but we pull these 5 dates out to be the key dates that the Finance Subcommittee would recommend to the full school committee as our budget development calendar. So the dates that you see are February 6, 2025, That would be the FY26 initial budget request presented to the school committee with the budget overview. Then the 13th, the following week, would be the public hearing on the FY26 initial budget request. And that's when we would vote to send the preliminary budget request to the TA. The 26th, the 12th, and the 20th are all different budget deliberations. The 26th of February is the Finance Subcommittee, and then 2 more full committee budget deliberations. The 20th of March is a budget-only meeting and includes a possible vote on the final budget. So this process is relatively similar to the one that we walked through last year, and would actually maintain our compliance with the town bylaw, which doesn't apply to us anyway, according to town council, but it would still keep us in alignment with the general expectations of when the budget would be sent from school committee to town administrator. Susan, did I miss any of the key points?
You did an excellent job, Mariah.
Are there any questions? Okay, so
well, actually, seeing none, but I have one, which is, I mean, I know there are a lot of constraints on this calendar. Like, if you were designing this from scratch, like, where are the points in this schedule that just don't work great, but we kind of have to do it? And, I'm just asking, what are the parts of this calendar that where we're just kind of constrained, but where it puts a lot of pressure on staff to do things earlier than would be ideal? And this is just for future reference. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I would highlight, and we discussed this at finance, and Susan, you should jump in, is that the February 6th date is 3 to 4 weeks later than the date that we received the budget last year. So that's a significant additional amount of time being put into to allow the budget team to prepare and scrub and refine and finalize the budget.
Okay, great.
I think another reason to have it be at the beginning of February, it's after the governor's budget has been published. And one of the things I observed last year was that there was a lot of preliminary information out there about what our revenues were going to be. And with your town school partnership agreement, which is kind of unique, it's not in place in all places, where it's revenue that's going to drive what our number is. Having as much information about what the revenue is as we submit to you our proposal is really important. So that will take some of the mystery out of where we're landing with money, because that's the number that's used throughout the budget process. So I think that that's a positive. Now, if the governor's budget comes out a few days early, like on the 26th, that gives us just a little bit more time to refine our proposal that's coming to, before the board. So I think that that's a real positive as well.
Great, thank you.
So again, the finance subcommittee recommended unanimously to the school committee to approve the budget development calendar dates.
Would you like to move it, Mariah?
I have a question.
Yeah, let's let Mariah move it if she wishes to, and then we can have the discussion.
So moved.
And do I have a second? I see Jesse. Okay. Stephen, go ahead.
So a number of these sessions are only if needed. What are the conditions that would require them?
You're looking in the working calendar section of this. We're only discussing the 5 dates at the top. That's the official school committee calendar. The rest of that is just the finance subcommittee working calendar. So we have additional dates marked if we need them for the finance subcommittee.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Jesse?
Yeah, Mariah, my question has to do with this September meeting coming up, joint with curriculum, being my first year on the school committee and my first year on the curriculum subcommittee. Can you just take a moment or two to explain the relationship in that meeting between finance and curriculum specifically?
Sure. So the SIPs that you see there on the calendar for September 18th are the school improvement plans. And Susan, jump in if I get any of this wrong, or Linus. The 1993 or 4 ed reform law made clear that schools are supposed to, basically budgets are supposed to be allocated to the schools. And so school improvement plans are part of the budgetary cycle that drives where investments in schools should be made. So because the SIPs are supposed to direct some of the budget, they are part of the budget process, but they're also tied to curriculum.
Thank you.
Anyone who's remote should just speak up because I can't see you.
Yeah, Andy, this is
Suzanne?
Suzanne. Can I go ahead?
Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say also just this curriculum finance joint meeting, people should be aware that we're actually talking about a budget that will be a year out. So I mean, it's for the next school year budget. School improvement plans are happening now, so they have to kind of anticipate what they're going to need almost a year in advance. But that's an important conversation to have around finance. So I just want to add that piece.
Andy, I would just add too that the discussion of SIPs in September, early in the fall / we're trying to realign an overall budget calendar. So this is part of that work. And that's not quite where it should be finally, but we're getting it towards the direction of when we need to talk about SIPs to be able to do the strategic planning and long-term planning that Suzanne just referenced.
Yes, thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any more hands, so unless someone speaks up, let's move to a vote on this calendar. Jesse?
Aye.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, this takes us to Dr. Guillory's presentation and discussion of draft goals and focus indicators for the 2025 superintendent evaluation. You'll recall that from the summer workshop, this was sort of the major change that we made to our process from last year. So these goals and focus indicators are coming up first time now and again in October, so that the school committee has a chance to weigh in on what those goals are and try to understand how they align with our strategic plan.
Awesome. Thank you for that context and setup, Andy. So these are draft goals, and I say that because next week I'm going to my leadership development, professional development that
Dr. Guillory, lost your audio there.
Thank you. So these are draft goals, and I was saying that next week I'm going to the professional development series that I'm participating in next week, and so I anticipate getting some additional feedback and guidance on the goals there. As I share with you, since I've been here, supervision and evaluation is going to be one of the, you can expect to see it year after year. And we'll focus in on different aspects of supervision and evaluation. But I think this year, given the work that we are planning to do in the strategic plan and the measures that we have there, I thought it important to maintain our focus on student engagement. Again, and drilling down in that, and I think a lot of the work that's happening in the various departments are talking about instructional rounds and visits to classroom, looking at the materials that students have in front of them, as well as what's the students' interaction with those materials. And so this idea of nesting are focusing in on supervision and evaluation. That's number one, ensuring that from my standpoint, the 17 or so folks that are on my caseload are evaluated, which then cascades out to their direct reports and so on and so forth. So this notion, and we do have a metric in our strategic plan that also ties to evaluation as well. So this idea of nesting and getting coherence, and you'll see that a little bit later. But this first goal, or goal one, is on supervision and evaluation, and I have that nestled in the student learning goal for that particular indicator. And then for the standard, right now I have that identified as standard 1D. So I think we can talk through them if we want to do it that way, or I can go through them all and then have you all respond, or you can send me your responses later, whatever makes sense.
I think, why don't you just talk through them all now? We're well ahead of schedule. We do have some time.
Okay.
And it's quite a lot to take in all at once. So.
All right, so why don't I just read it for the record then? Its current iteration. Goal 1, supervision and evaluation. Active ongoing feedback is a leading indicator in high-performing organizations. PSB will continue to prioritize supervision, evaluation, and ongoing feedback as a means of continuous improvement. The focal point of my work with principals this year will continue in the area of student engagement. Throughout the school year, I will prioritize the supervision, evaluation, and provision of ongoing actionable feedback to principals with a focus on improving student engagement. Success will be measured by an increase in student engagement metrics as observed through classroom walkthroughs. And again, some of these parts still have to be developed. I have to think through how I really want to capture this and baseline this information as well. Students, to ensure inclusivity, feedback will be tailored to meet the diverse needs of schools with additional support for schools facing the greatest challenges in student engagement. The initiative will emphasize equitable practices by allowing resources and professional development to schools with the highest rates of disengaged students, ensuring that all students are actively engaged in their learning. So again, this notion of our extremes, what are our higher performing students need, because parents have been talking to me about what might my student or my child be doing once they've already mastered, or so how do I push them further? So I'm thinking about that student, and then I'm also thinking about the student that needs additional support and resources as well. So it's the bookends there. Sarah?
So I had something that wasn't actually for you, but it's for the rest of the fellow committee members. We talked a lot about process when we last talked about this. And so this is the place where it would be appropriate to tell the superintendent the types of things that you would like to see in order to fulfill those goals. So if you don't feel happy with the process, then you can, be supportive in saying what you would like him to report on later.
Thank you. Stephen?
So thanks for this, Dr. Guillory. Just a comment about the benchmarks. So one of the difficulties that I had with the evaluation previously is that some of the benchmarks weren't easily reviewable by the school committee. So some of these benchmarks seem like benchmarks for you, which seem understandable, but I'm not clear on how it would be reviewable by the school committee. So a suggestion I have is that all benchmarks should be easily reviewable by the school committee. So for instance, if something you want to do is deliver feedback in the moment to school leaders, that be somehow documented and available to school committee members so that we could review your summary of that feedback so we can understand how it was delivered.
Perfect.
Andy,
Carolyn?
can I ask a question too?
By all means.
Okay. On this specific one, in the summer, I don't think I think I did not respond because the data, as I understood it, did not match the indicator, because the indicator is about all the people who are supposed to be being evaluated, and this is about your direct reports. And while I think your direct reports are very important and the evaluation or the feedback you're giving them ongoing is important, I also would like, if we're sticking with this one, to understand whether everyone in the district who is being evaluated who needs to be. I know that it's not every year for some people, but it is as you're starting off early. So whatever that is, to make sure that the people who are supposed to be are being, I would find to be an important addition to this. Because part of this is about the district, right? And just not about you as a single employee, but as who oversees a team, but as the head of an entire district.
Right, and part of that is we have that also captured in the strategic plan, I believe, as an evaluation metric as well. So it will couple nicely with that, so we'll be able to provide better, stronger data on that area as well.
Andy, this is Suzanne.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yeah, so I would just like to say that I think this is a really critical goal for eventually student learning, and that we're really asking principals to be instructional leaders. And the way to help them see that role, which may or may not be new for them, many of them already understand that, but some may not, is that when Dr. Guillory is evaluating them, that models for them how they can then evaluate their staff. And so I think this is a critical goal, and I am glad to see it here and fully support making that happen.
Thanks, Suzanne. Carolyn, did you still want to say something?
Sure, thank you. And I risk sort of being like off base here because this is all new. But what Suzanne just said is really helpful, and I recognize that Dr. Guillory's goal, Dr. Guillory, the goal here is for you to be working on supervision and evaluation, and that's clear. Some of, as Stephen, I think, alluded to, for me, some of the metric stuff still feels a little elusive, and also fully recognizing that this is super drafty. But for me, I think, and I mentioned this briefly at the workshop, I'd love to understand or even have it be made explicit kind of what is meant by engagement, likewise disengagement. And so where you say, for example, additional support for schools facing the greatest challenges in student engagement, like, so my brain just says like, what is that? What does that look like on a granular level? So although I recognize that your goal is not the student engagement piece, but you're evaluating your direct reports on that, I'd love just more sort of concrete would help me understand that better, and what exactly the measurables are. Thanks.
All right, Helen and then Stephen.
So following up on that, I think one of the metrics for me at least, in terms of student engagement, is attendance, just being there, and the chronic absence metric, if that might be one that you might want to think about using as a tool to see how student engagement is going. I mean, there's some chronic, absences because we live near the hospitals that are unavoidable, and I'd like to take those out of the, but there are other kids who aren't always coming to school. I mean, we saw that this last year, we had some reports on it. So, I mean, I agree that it's hard to, how do you put a metric on student engagement? I mean, absences is one thing that I could think of at least.
Stephen.
But I'm sure there are others. Yeah, it's not the only.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on my previous point and then Mariah's point. So I liked where Mariah was heading with the in the systems direction. And so I wanted to add some specificity to my suggestion. My understanding of 1D aligns well, I think, with yours, Dr. Guillory, in that it's more specific to your assessment of your immediate reports, except for in the example evidence of 1D, there's a piece that I think aligns with the direction that Mariah was pushing, which I like. And that is, it gives under the evaluation indicator analysis of school and classroom observation data and analysis of student and staff feedback data. I thought that went nicely with your fifth benchmark there. So if you wanted to add detail to that or revise it in that direction so it was more clearly your analysis of how other people were doing their own evaluations, that might help us understand how you were pushing out evaluation at a systems level rather than how your own evaluations were proceeding. Just a suggestion for how that benchmark might be applied to your promotion of evaluation systemically. Thanks.
All right, shall we move on to the second goal, district coherence? Sure, go ahead, Carolyn.
And apologies if this is overly granular, but just piggybacking on what Helen said about absenteeism, that made me think about the two new practices that our student rep Kieran said that the high school is going to be utilizing tardiness, extreme tardiness, and leaving the classroom, which seem pretty concrete in terms of engagement. So,
Thank you. District coherence. Now, this one I have listed as a district improvement goal, and I'm still going to try to align it to some specific indicators, but I see this as still a very broad brush of overall system here. And again, I still have to, I'm playing with the language here, but I'll read what's written. Goal 2, district coherence. Beginning in the 24-25 school year, I will lead the public schools of Brookline in developing district-wide coherence by utilizing the multi-year integrated strategic plan to drive continuous improvement. This process will focus on building a shared understanding of the district's key initiatives across all schools and departments. Success will be measured through staff understanding and alignment with district goals and by tracking improvements in student outcomes tied to strategic initiatives. The initiatives will include targeted professional development and regular collaborative sessions for school leaders to ensure inclusivity and support for diverse needs across schools. To promote equity, special attention will be given to ensuring that all schools, particularly those with historically underserved student populations, are fully engaged in the coherence building process. Progress will be reviewed at each semester with adjustments made as necessary to ensure all parts of the system are working together to achieve their desired outcome. And again, this is the desired state. We'll continue to push, refine, and tweak this as we go along. And I think, you know, some of the work that we saw this evening around human resources, operations, the work that Student Services has done, as well as OTL to get the schools ready, a number of the bodies of work that OEE are leading as well. So it's that, what we think of here, the four corners and everything in between here. So still some more work to do on this one.
Stephen.
I just want to say I thought this one was really nicely articulated, and I also think it aligns really well with 4E, the shared vision indicator. I thought the example evidence bullets were example leadership team meeting agenda items and analyses. That dovetails, I thought, nicely with your first benchmark. And the second one was about communication with staff, families, and community. That dovetails neatly with your second one. You were thinking of it more as a final document, but that one's, I mean, maybe it is a final document, maybe it's just regular communications. Both seem reviewable to me, and they both work well with that 4E shared vision indicator. If you were looking to align it, that might be a place for it. And that's under professional culture.
So for me, this seems like a very broad and ambitious goal, and I'm sort of having trouble pulling out sort of particular items that I guess would be comprehensible to the school committee, certainly to me. So I don't know if it's possible to to zero in a bit more on sort of specific instances of the coherence that we're seeking. That would be helpful for me. Jesse?
Yeah, just to follow up, I guess, on what you said, Andy, when I read this yesterday, or this morning when Betsy sent it, I had an issue also in trying to understand what you mean by coherence. Is this just vision alignment? Is this objective alignment? What is it really getting at?
Vision and systems working together. I mean, vision alignment, but also systems working together is the way that I'm thinking about it. But your point is well taken to, again, make it more lucid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess my My second question here had to do with this sentence. Again, you were talking about wordsmithing it. So when you talk about equity, you mentioned that particularly those with historically underserved, that schools are fully engaged in the coherence building process, but you align it particularly here with historically underserved student populations. I would suggest perhaps that adjustments need to be made in both directions. For low achieving students or students that have been historically disadvantaged, we want to make sure we're aligning all the schools together, but at the same time, for the cohort of high achieving students, we want to make sure that they're getting what they need as well, equitably. And so perhaps there could be some balance in the statement about our effort to align our objectives to meet the needs not only of historically underserved populations, but as well, I made a note when I read it earlier, of high achieving student groups as well.
Carolyn.
Thanks. Also, just sort of a wording question in that same sentence, and actually that phrase, historically underserved populations. It wasn't clear to me reading that whether that's a term of art, meaning something specific, or whether we're talking about Brookline, which has its own unique and really important aspects, as Susan was mentioning. I think last year we had 31% of our students not speaking English as a first language. So I'd love to just sort of understand a little bit more what's meant there, and how it relates to this piece.
Okay.
Andy, one other.
Yeah, Jesse.
I like the action of number 5 of establishing the data dashboards, but sort of picking up on the sort of the themes that Stephen had mentioned earlier. Perhaps that should be a benchmark as well. In other words, if you want something measurable, it's to what extent were data dashboards actually delivered? Are they usable? Did the school committee make the kind of efficient use of them that was planned or not? So perhaps that's a convenient item to put down in the benchmark section as well.
And Sarah?
If these are, you said for the first goal that it was definitely multi-year. Is district coherence multi-year as well?
Yeah.
So then to maybe help you be able to drill down, do you want to cite a particular curricula for this year to look into instead of having it be in all different subjects, just to be more specific so that the goal can be more measurable? And then in other years, you can look at other curricula, especially if we have curricula that doesn't feel established right now. It might be good to leave those ones out.
Yeah, so theme here seems to be sort of, we might be looking for greater specificity, even if it does mean narrowing the focus.
All right, goal 3, internal district communication. By the end of the 24-25 school year, I will implement a district-wide internal communications plan aimed at improving the frequency, clarity, and effectiveness of communication between district leadership, school administrators, and staff. Success will be measured by an increase in staff satisfaction with communication as indicated by annual surveys and by an increase in participation rates for district-wide meetings and initiatives. The plan would include monthly newsletters and regular leadership meetings. Progress will be reviewed through staff feedback and participation metrics with adjustments made as necessary. And I have that listed as professional practice goals, standard 4C.
Stephen.
Thanks. I think this is a great goal. Just one suggestion for benchmarks. I think you already listed one of the benchmarks in the description itself, which is the collateral, the actual pieces of communications. I think actually more important than the collateral is the procedures and protocols, though. That's the other suggested benchmark, because I think I'll speak for myself. I think that's what I would find more useful, is a description of the occasions that would warrant specific kinds of communications collaterals to specific stakeholder populations. So in what circumstances would certain pieces of communications be created and sent, rather than evidence of those specific communications? I would find that a very important benchmark.
Could you explain that? I don't understand. I'm sorry.
I think, I guess I feel awash in the actual specific pieces of communications myself. And that is listed as one of the potential benchmarks for 4C. There's another potential benchmark, which is listed as compilation of procedures and protocols to communicate effectively with the school committee. Selfishly, I love that one. It could just be, I'm reading from the example evidence that Dr. Guillory sent to us earlier. It could be with any stakeholder group, though. I think just a description of procedures and protocols and the kind of communications that different circumstances would warrant, what comms circumstances would warrant, that would be very helpful to me. So for instance, if a certain event occurs at a school, what would be communicated to whom at what date? I feel like that's the kind of thing we're always talking about. That sort of thing would be a protocol, I think. And that would be a benchmark for 4C that I would think is meaningful. I don't know, does that sound right to you?
It's clearer now what you're saying.
Okay.
This is Suzanne. Stephen, I'm not sure that's what this goal is saying. It sounds like it's almost a different goal that you're asking for. This sounds to me like a regular district-wide internal communication plans, not specific to an incident or a complaint or a grievance or something.
Then I would suggest putting it under 3C, because I think 3C is more about communicating to various stakeholder groups, whereas I think 4C is very specifically about procedures and protocols for school committee communication. I'm just reading from the example evidence document that Dr. Guillory submitted to us to help understand what meaningful evidence looks like.
Okay.
I hear you, Suzanne. I'm not disagreeing. That was just my interpretation of what 4C means. And if goal 3 is intended to mean something like what you said, I think it aligns better with standard 3C.
Can I add a little bit to what Stephen is saying, though? I think as a member of staff, I'm a member of staff elsewhere, and a lot of my satisfaction isn't about the regular communications about regular stuff, but being communicated to about the irregular stuff at the right time. So to exclude that from the planning here, I think I would see that as a missed opportunity if we're really looking at how we make sure staff are satisfied and know what's going on, making sure there is a plan for what we communicate about that isn't part of the regular weekly message or whatever it's going to be. I think there is value to that. So I would endorse Stephen's point, only because, again, this is about doing the right thing for staff, and that includes making sure that they have relevant information at the right time, even if that falls outside of a standard operating procedure for standard communications.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Ryan. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying the way I interpreted this goal as it's written, it does not address what you and Stephen are talking about. So if that's what we want to talk about, we either add that, ask Dr. Guillory to add that, or we tweak this to include that, or we make them two different goals, or we pick one of those two. That's what I'm suggesting.
I guess we need to establish now whether the committee feels strongly enough that what Stephen and Mariah have been talking about should be the goal, or should at least be a major part of the goal, because it does involve a wholesale rewriting of what's currently there. So.
Why does it involve a wholesale rewriting?
Because it's a different sort of thing. Like
nothing that's written here excludes what we're talking about.
I guess
it's a communications plan. We're just calling out a bit of it that should be in there.
Maybe to put a finer point on the question, does the committee believe that it should be a goal of the district to have sort of clearly written out communication protocols dealing with sort of unforeseen events and telling the community, who can expect what kind of communication on what time scale based on the type of event that occurred?
But this wasn't about the community. This was about communication with staff. Those are two different things.
Okay, I guess we can limit it to communication with staff, but anyway, I think for me the main question is that where we want to go, and do we want to actually would we like Dr. Guillory to embody that in a goal for evaluation this coming year? Jesse, and then Sarah.
Did you have your hand up first, by the way? You sure? You sure?
Oh, okay, I didn't catch who had their hand up first. Yeah.
I guess my question here is that in reading this yesterday, this is one of the big four, Dr. Guillory, for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question honestly was like, is there that big a problem with internal district communication? And so listed my brief time, since May, so that, I'm getting a ton of stuff that Betsy's sending out that are CCs of things that are going out from you, things that are going out from the building leaders. I know that there's site council and PTO communications going out very, very regularly. So when I saw no benchmarks, and I'm saying, well, what are we going to measure here? And I'm asking myself, how significant of an issue is this to start with? In other words, our survey, there's no information here that I'd be able to judge and say, the surveys have shown that it's dreadful. And so this is like a really big communication goal, because we need to get from dreadful to amazing. So I don't have a sense of how serious the situation is that generated this goal. Maybe you could help me understand.
Sure. So no, there is definitely a need for internal district communication. So right now, the pattern has been every Friday. And when I tell every other superintendents that they get, our community gets something every Friday, their mind is blown by that, because they say, well, it's once a month for me or twice a month at most, but our community gets something every Friday. But what we realized was that our staff, the time at which they were learning things was either through social media, through the Friday communication, or through school committee, so they weren't getting internal information prior to. So this is an opportunity to lead with that, to make sure that our staff is informed as such, and we've already started a beta version of a communication as well. So, but there is more refinement, certainly, and I don't think I put the benchmarks.
So, when you're saying you started a beta already, what does that mean?
One went out yesterday.
So is this basically the frequency between communications is shortening to respond?
No, I would say that folks are getting communication that they weren't getting before. So this is a new mode for communicating directly to staff.
Right, but if this is, I guess, I'll push a little harder. If this is a twice a week or 3 times a week or as needed, then how can this be a 2-year plan? In other words, what do you do next after that this is going to cover for the next 2 years if it's already started being addressed because it's an issue and the changes are happening almost like in real time? Apparently.
Well, it's starting to be addressed now, right? It hasn't, and so what we've started a small portion. There's a whole design piece of it. Okay. So there was an initial communication that's gone out. To Mariah's point, what information would be helpful as such? So all of those things will be figured out over the course of the year, and we'll keep improving it and refining it as we go along.
Okay.
Yep.
If I could just.
Go ahead, Helen.
I think this is, oh, I'm sorry. No, you go first. You sure? I'm sorry. I forgot. I actually think this is important if it's a perceived, staff should not be blindsided.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're feeling blindsided, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a really critical goal to accomplish, and hopefully it can be accomplished in a year. It's something that seems simple, but sometimes, A doesn't know what B is doing, and it's hard all the time to keep everybody informed, and I think having this as a goal is important. And I think the satisfaction of the staff, sort of doing baseline now, what do you think has happened in the past, and then at the end of the year, has this improved, what is this like, would be I think a good, it helps, I think it with engagement of staff and people feeling part of.
Well, I guess I'll just add to that then that you mentioned there's a beta. Maybe at some point soon you could articulate what that framework is. Is it some digital media platform that PSB is using that's allowing staff in almost real time, if you need to reach them about something, to be able to tell them something that they all get either texted to them or emailed to them? How's it being sort of managed and structured so that when you do the satisfaction survey or get feedback from staff, the results go in the right direction, that people feel they're getting it in time and accurately?
Stephen?
I guess I don't want to be prescriptive here. I think if this stays aligned with 4C, I think Mariah said the best possible benchmark, which would be a comms plan. And however you want to define what protocols and policies mean for driving communications, strategic communications, that we would defer to you. But I don't want to sound prescriptive about what circumstances it should adjudicate. But I think a good benchmark would be a comms plan. I'm out of curiosity, is Neil's position a strategic comms position? Does that include that role?
No, Neil does more. Neil does more like preparing the slide decks for the evening. He does the weekly Friday message that you get. If there's emergency communication, he works on that as well.
Okay. Well, so my only recommendation here is that if it stays aligned with 4C, I think a comms plan would be a great benchmark.
All right, let's go to number 4. Budget process. Again, Susan and Mariah have already talked through this, or talked through the notion of tightening our budget process. I will enhance the district's budgeting process by building on previous improvements, ensuring that budget allocations are transparent, equitable, and aligned with district priorities. Success will be measured by achieving an increase in budget manager satisfaction. So these are the folks that are preparing the budgets, are building the budget. Their knowledge, are they getting more comfortable with this as we align, as Mariah talked about, to Ed Reform Act of '93 and schools being the cost centers? With the budget process as indicated from feedback from school leaders, department managers, and community members, i.e. through school site councils, again, previously shared. And by maintaining a balanced budget with minimal variance, and this is, I hope Dr. Givens doesn't throw a shoe at me, by maintaining a balanced budget with minimal variance between projected and actual expenditures. This process will include quarterly financial reviews with principals and department heads. Again, this was at a time we were very centered on our budgets, so our school principals and department heads had minimal input there. So we've expanded their roles and responsibilities with the budgeting process since I've gotten to Brookline. To ensure inclusivity, budgeting process will actively involve, again, the notion of the historically underrepresented groups, ensuring their input is reflected in final decisions. Equity will be prioritized by allocating resources to schools and programs servicing high-need students. Progress will be monitored through ongoing feedback from stakeholders, and adjustments will be made to ensure continuous improvement in the budgeting process. Again, we have a number, 3 of our schools that are still Title I, that being Lincoln, FRR, and the high school. So 4 now. Who's now? Baker's now Title I. Okay. So that, Dr. Fortuna, why don't you come up and and make lucid the Title I aspect, and then we'll answer any questions that folks have there.
I don't know how lucid I'm going to be able to make it. We are considered targeted assistance for Title I, which means that we look at schools and we rank our schools based on the poverty that each school is experiencing. And I don't have the cutoff in my head. It might be, Helen. I don't have it right now. I would defer to you on that with your vast experience. Thank you.
So basically, Title I indicates a higher percentage of families under a certain poverty? Is it
Below
gathered-
the state median,
The sta-
the
Federal.
federal median,
Yeah,
okay,
or the federal low poverty.
and it's gathered from census data.
okay.
And we get extra funds. Title I's a
Okay.
grant that one gets.
So somehow the district reports that, and then those schools.
The state gathers that data
Okay.
from the census.
And they
then
let
tells
you.
us.
Okay, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Let's go 4.
So you said Baker
Baker, Lincoln, FRR, the high school.
and the high school? Mm-hmm. The high school has never been before. That's interesting.
It's been since I've been here, yeah.
They were
last year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're done presenting that
That's it,
goal.
yep.
Okay, so my question would be, would we be looking to the budget book, like, or the layout of the budget book or information in the budget book for evidence about whether these things are happening?
Well, this is going to be, right now I have it more of a process piece for the education. Dr. Givens and I have been talking about how to increase our budget managers' strength in the budgeting process, their understanding of it and alignment. So, a great example of this, and I'll use this with principals, is that right now our collective bargaining agreement has what we call exceptions to the hiring process, where you can hire someone at a higher scale. We get 15, I have 15 of those slots every year. And so when a principal is saying, well, I really want this particular teacher, they're coming with this experience, it's a hard to fill spot, as Dr. Givens has talked about. They're coming from a district, or they may be coming from out of state, and we have to pay them a much more competitive salary than what our entry requirements are. So one of the things that our principals have now gotten better at is saying, if I'm going to go for this particular exception, I have to think about also what other adjustments I may need to make in my hiring or in other budgeting matters, so that I don't inadvertently, quote unquote, break the bank in a sense. So just getting people to really be thinking intentionally about certainly the educational need, but then also what's the financial impact of the decision that I'm making. So the budget book may be one example of this, but it's also the trainings that we are also going to do, or the preparations that we're going to do, or the experiences that we're going to take people through as we develop this year's budget. So it's more thinking about building their experiences, their financial muscles, is a nice way to say it as well. And we may be able to see that. It may manifest itself in the budgeting book, but I'm more thinking about their experience in the budget bill process.
So this would become visible to the committee through sort of narratives that.
Through the narratives, or either looking at their products that they submit for the budget, as well as examples, and those make their way to the budget book, so that's a great synthesis place for it as well.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else have remarks or questions here? Jesse?
Are you referring to just overall anything about these?
Well, if anyone has
On the
something
budget.
specific to this goal, and then we can maybe get more general. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so go ahead, Jesse.
Well, okay. I guess my question, Dr. Guillory, is the following. I'm trying to understand, like, why only these 4 goals? Maybe, again, my first time through the process. Whether or not there is a space for a goal that has to do with a specific goal for the entire district. An example that pops into mind right away is, say, literacy or numeracy. You mentioned it earlier, actually, in your opening statement from the superintendent's first report of the year, or the welcoming letter, I think. And so I'm wondering, that's something that would tie the superintendent's goal to a massive district goal, which is to raise literacy from where it is today, which we know is a serious issue, to where we'd like to get it. Same thing with numeracy. So would that be a reasonable, again, my first time through the process, a reasonable goal that the superintendent would set, which is and it ties in with that coherence message earlier as well about everybody wants to be on the same page about getting the improvements that we're hoping for in literacy in all its facets, all the way from, young children to our graduates of BHS. And so that would tie a lot of things together, and it would sort of send, I guess, over the next 2 years, a very clear message to the school community and the town of Brookline at large about the superintendent's goal in that particularly, very important area.
Yeah, so what we think about there is we're looking at what we have already articulated in the strategic plan, which this year is, for the next 3 years, a heavy focus on literacy. It doesn't mean that numeracy and critical thinking aren't happening in the organization, but we also have to think about how much the same staff are going to be doing all of these things. So we have to also think about their load, the load that they're carrying also as well. And when we're ready to actually review our math curriculum for that, so it's again an order of operations as such, and right now literacy is the one that's on the docket. So it doesn't mean that the others aren't important, it's just it doesn't mean that that's necessarily where I'm digging in on at this moment, so.
Any other remarks on the evaluation?
Sorry, I do have, sorry.
Helen and then Carolyn.
So I think, you can only be evaluated on so many items. You can't, there are many goals and many things that are happening in the system that will continue to happen, that we will, different deputy superintendents and principals will make sure happens in the schools. And so you have to, and this crude way of evaluation, which I am not a fan of, is hard, makes it hard. So I think, it's not like we're not doing it. It's not like there's not a whole crew of people working on literacy. It's just that we have to figure out, is that what, one of the goals? And, forget about some of the other ones. You can only do so many goals in a year that you can be evaluated on. I don't think you can be evaluated on everything that happens in the system. So unless there's a better way of doing it, and that I don't.
I guess my question is, how many goals are a regular set of goals? That's because I don't know. I see 4. Maybe there should be 6.
I think,
Or maybe there should
they
be, I don't know.
recommend 4, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Somebody may know better than me.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The template for superintendents is really not that different from the template for teachers like me, actually. It's the same, very much the same format. So, yeah, it's pretty stereotyped. Carolyn?
Thanks, I'll be quick. And I like this goal. But again, and recognizing that this is super drafty, and because maybe I'm not that smart, I need things super concrete. So like where this says clear communication budget priorities through public forums, that makes me wonder, is that like the public forums that are required for budget review and that we usually do anyway, or is there something else in mind, like where you could say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then if X, Y, Z happens, that's great. And again, the phrase historically underrepresented groups, ensuring their input is reflected in financial decisions. I think I probably get where that's going directionally on a meaning level, but like I don't fully understand what underrepresented groups means in this context. So I would be looking for just a little more understanding there. But I like this goal. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Guillory, for sort of pulling all of this together earlier than you've had to do in the past, and thanks to the committee for their input. So timeline on this is I had it right in front of me. So I believe on October 10th, yeah, this will come back before the committee for a vote. And in the meantime, we'll have had a discussion, we'll have briefly revisited the strategic plan at our September 25th meeting. So that will be fresh in our minds as well, because that's coming out as a fully fleshed out document. And we'll just be taking a quick look at that. So, all right. That brings us to subcommittee and liaison reports. Many subcommittees have been meeting over the summer, so we've set aside about half an hour for this. So let's start with capital improvements.
I thought it was a half an hour for me.
Oh, for you. Well,
So I have a lot to report because the summer is the time that capital projects really happen, when students aren't in school and we have the opportunity to empty a whole school and not use it during the summer. We had our capital subcommittee meeting on August 27th and started it with a actual tour. We had it at the Lincoln School and started it with the tour of the school so that people could see the work that's been done over the last 2 years. It's not finished. It will be finished next summer. But we've refreshed the school. For 30 years, it hasn't been touched. And so we determined that, that we would take it offline for 2 years. Now it's going to be 3 years. We had hoped to finish it in 2 years. And a lot was done, and it really does look much, much better and can last us for another 20 years because it's a very good school with good bones and works for teaching and learning. At the meeting, we also discussed, we got an update on the other mini CIP projects that were done this summer, in a number of the schools, at Baker, Baldwin, Lincoln, Hayes, Lawrence, and Munkle schools. And you can read the minutes if you want for the details. I'm not going to go into all of it. But a lot of it was painting, flooring, and things like that that needed refurbishment, stairwells, et cetera. We had a short report on repair and maintenance because Charlie Simmons, our director of buildings, was not able to attend. He was still off on leave. And we discussed a little bit about utility costs at that meeting and the higher electricity costs that we've been experiencing. Part of it is a phenomenon of Driscoll School being all electric and not having the geothermal working this last year, so the costs skyrocketed. We began the discussion of a CIP, our CIP request for next year. We did not finish it, unfortunately, because we didn't have the building department there, and we need their input too. So our hope is to have a meeting either on October 1st or October 7th to go over the final CIP request. It's a little bit later than usual this year. But that's the plan at this point. We also, I don't know if any of you have gotten, but I've gotten a number of emails from Lincoln School parents about the condition of the playground there, which also hadn't been updated for 30 years and was having both drainage issues and playability issues with water congregating in the mud bowl there, I guess you could call it that. What's the good news is that DPW, they also contacted DPW, and DPW has determined that it is a bigger priority and has moved up the planning and design work for 2027 CIP, so we're going into 2026 CIP, right? Yeah. And so it would be the following year for planning. They have like 400,000 in there for planning, and then the following year, 5 million for redoing the playground. It may need to be phased. It may not all be, in one summer, just because of the amount of work that needs to happen. But at least it's moved up, and it's in the pipeline. I think I got everything from the meeting. Was there anything else? So they did do some work on the drainage this summer. They put down pavers behind the kindergarten classrooms. So they did do some work to get rid of, to redirect some of the water. I don't think it's all the work that needs to happen, but it's just, some of the work, and that was through the DPW funds that they have. But they're, at least we're on the CIP if Parks and Rec voted it last week, which I'm hoping they did vote their suggested CIP. But we will have a chance to look at that. Okay, and so now Driscoll School update. The school is finished for the most part inside, everything, there's maybe some more, a little bit of punch list, but not much. But the playground has not been finished. It is somewhat done. The geothermal has gone in. The playground equipment is in. They're talking about pouring the surface underneath the play structures next week and hopefully getting the playground.
Second week of October, Helen.
October, not September 19th?
No, not September 19th, October.
Okay, I missed that one, sorry. It keeps on moving. Well, one will find out in these building projects, you'll see over time, it always takes longer. It never happens, or if it does, it's sort of like by the skin of our teeth that we get in on time. So just, that's what happens with construction. I'm sure if anybody's done construction in their own home, they see that it, at least it doesn't, oftentimes people talk about it costs twice as much and takes twice as long. It never costs us twice as much. That much I can tell you. Sometimes it takes twice as long.
Is this in addition to the playground that's already, the new one that's already in place on Westbourne Terrace?
Playground.
So there's the field is there, the soccer
Yes.
field was
Yeah,
put
yeah.
in. But there
Yes.
are other play areas that are in process. There's a younger kids play area where some of the play structures, as Helen said, have been installed.
Correct.
They need to pour the surfaces. The splash pad is going to actually be the last thing that happens, and I believe the second week of October.
Also the gardens.
The rain garden.
No, the other garden.
Well, yes, the other garden and some other plantings need to happen, but also the rain garden needs to be completed. And like I said, the final thing will be the splash pad. That's sort of on that side close to where the staff parking lot is.
Unfortunately, most of it, I mean, I know that Val said October. I think, by the time we say goodbye to Gilbane, the contractor, it'll probably be January. Just in terms of what usually happens. But the good news is school is functioning and doing well, and everybody seems to be very happy.
Right, and they're using the field already.
They're using it, yeah, but I think they also, Val,
fenced
correct me if I'm
separately.
wrong, doesn't it need some infill?
It has the infill and it was tested and everything was
Oh, good.
optimal or better. So
Yeah.
that field is being used, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fenced separately from the construction.
Yes.
We were there last week.
Oh,
Or This
okay.
week, actually, this week.
Terrific. Thank you for looking at it. So Pierce School, as most of you may have or may not have seen, the bridge is gone. That was done on a Saturday and was really exciting. I actually walked over there and saw some of it. And they're in the process of recycling much of what is the school. I think, I'm trying to remember the percentage, and I don't want to give the wrong number, so I'll give it next time, of how much of the bricks, the cement, and all the materials in the building are being recycled. We did the abatement of all the hazardous, and there's still more to do around the bricks, unfortunately. And Pierce, in case you didn't know, has a double layer of bricks because it was leaking. And so they decided the only way to fix it at the time was to put another layer of bricks on it. But that being said, The school got moved this summer through the Herculean efforts of Karen King and Sarah, help. Gooding, thank you. Sorry, Sarah, if you're watching. They really made it happen. And what I'm going to show you now is some pictures of both Old Lincoln School and Newbury, and how they moved everything out of the old school into the new school. Everything ended up in the right place. Libraries were set up. We reused the library furniture from Pierce that was fairly new at Lincoln that had 30-year-old shelving. And so here we are at Pierce at Fisher Hill, or Old Newbury School, and we have a penguin. The penguins are Pierce, in case you didn't know. So they have two cafeteria areas. This is one, and one of them, and then there's, okay, we can go there. And there's the second one. And so they can, split the kids up. It's actually worked out beautifully. From all reports from both principals, things are working very well. Let's move on to this is the nurse's office. This is the library. And then this is a classroom, and there's another classroom on the other side of that divider. Pierce is very used to having dividers to specify where the classrooms are, but they're thrilled with having 4 walls and a door too. I don't remember which classroom this is, or this one. These are just different classrooms within the building. The building department did a wonderful job of making them bright and clean, and this is the science lab. And that, it must be just another class. These are just different classrooms within the building. This is outside where they can picnic lunch. So in addition to the inside, they have outdoor lunches. And this is where the basketball, you see a basketball court there, right, everybody? There's a basketball court there. And now we're at Pierce and now we're at Pierce at Old Lincoln School. This is the auditorium with the plaster statues that are there. Those were brought over by Mr. Lincoln from many moons ago. Cafeteria. I just thought it would be nice for all of you to get a sense of what everything looks like and not have to, although I was speaking with Principal Yadoff, and she's more than happy to give a tour if anybody wants of either of the spaces. She'd prefer if we did it in a group rather than separately, but can we go on? This nurse's office, thank you. This was the nurse's office when the high school was there, when many other places. It's a second grade classroom, I think. These are the different classrooms. The rooms at Old Lincoln are wonderful. Where Old Lincoln is located is awful. It's on Route 9, and the playground's across the street. But the rooms, the light in the rooms, the space is really wonderful. This is the art room, 5th grade. And teachers have done a magnificent job of putting things together, making it look, just great. It's a really fully functioning school. So, okay, I think we've gotten to all the classrooms.
I think we should also thank Jamie Yadoff, the Pierce
Oh my
principal,
God, of
and
course,
her
of
head
course.
custodians, Bo and Eunice, the custodians.
And Jim Stoddard and the rest of the staff there. We would never be here. Jamie worked incredible hours throughout the summer to make sure that this happened and happened well. And parents, from my understanding, well, we haven't gotten any complaints, let's put it that way. And parents are really happy with the school. They had tours of it. So I really think that's going well. Okay.
I also want to give a shout out to the maintenance staff and the custodial
Oh,
staff for
thank
their
you.
contributions
Of
to making
course.
this happen as well.
Yeah, everybody was working most of the summer to get these buildings up and functioning and ready for students. They did a fantastic job. And thanks to the building department for all the work that they did within there for things that needed to be fixed, et cetera. Last piece that,
Sorry, I have are you moving on from Pierce or?
I'm going, yeah, I'm
Okay.
going to another piece of Pierce, but
Oh, okay.
the freezes.
Okay, so I'd love to just jump in with one. And I don't know, so this is all great and it's sort of unrelated, but I just feel like as a school committee member, there was I think today saw at least 2 emails from community members with concerns about roadway crossings, and maybe that's not capital, and maybe.
No, it is.
This isn't,
No,
I know it's not necessarily the time, it's not on the docket, but I just feel responsible as a public person, like, because there's conversation about the crossing of Route 9 and the sidewalk and crossing out here, and so I just
So
felt like I should mention
can
it.
speak to it somewhat. It's a work in progress, but it is happening. The students are walking to Old Lincoln School. We are aware we have crossing guards at most of the main crossing areas, if not all. We have one on Route 9. And there's still some kinks to be worked out. There's a crosswalk that was put in because the walk was along the school side of School Street it's been closed by the contractor because they need that space. So there's a new crosswalk, and that one has been complicated. We're working on it to try and figure out a solution for it. The staff is working on it. I'm not working on it. Well, I am somewhat, but it's more the staff and the town are working together to figure out solutions of how to make sure students cross safely. Okay?
And just to be clear, I'm sort of just feel obligated to pass that on.
Yeah.
I haven't been to either space, and it's not so much my question, it's just feeling like I should.
Yeah, no, I think it's a
Express
good
that,
question,
'cause it's
and-
coming
and
from the community.
It usually comes up, I remember
Sure.
with the high school, we had a similar question about safety for students
Right,
walking
yeah.
back and forth to the high school.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the year, we're working on it, we're aware of it, and I'm sure it'll be fixed within the next week or two. Of what needs to be fixed, I'm not sure. The one area that I understand is the biggest issue has to do with the crossing at School Street, that there is a way to go safely, and the principal has been telling parents to have kids go down to Washington Street, cross with the light and with the police person, I don't know who it is, who's there. That is the safe crossing to get to the bus. The direct way to get to the bus is to cross through that crosswalk. That is more difficult for both drivers to see and for kids to do safely. So that's where there's an issue. Any other questions about this part, about any of my report? No? Right?
Ellen, can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I don't know if I can't.
First Jesse and then you.
Let her go.
No, Jesse, go for it.
Well, it wasn't a question as much as a comment that in my meeting with the Public Health Department, they shared with me, just so people on the committee know, that there is some kind of non-airborne asbestos in Pierce, in the old building. So during the demolition, they're going to try to learn from what's happening now on Pleasant and John Street in the demolition there that got stopped because the neighborhood suddenly got inundated with people saying that there's airborne asbestos, and now that the entire Hancock Village group, the construction team, it's all on hold. So when I met with Segal, she pointed out that they're going to try to do an even better job now of communicating to the neighborhood that as the old Pierce comes down, that this is going to be monitored and analyzed, and
Well, so I'm glad you brought that
it's done
up.
in as safe a manner as possible.
I'm glad you brought that up because the contractor has been very responsible, both in terms of air quality, making sure that the daycares that are right next door, checking their air quality, checking their vents, making sure that, debris or whatever, particles.
Is not getting in the.
Is not getting into it, and measuring the vibrations. So that, if there's and all the neighbors could have had had the opportunity to have their basements inspected, et cetera, their houses, so that if there's vibrations cause any kind of damage, they can show it. So, but there will be those monitors throughout, through the demolition. And it should be coming down sometime in October, the major part of the building. Hopefully, we will be going out to bid in the end of November. The 90% drawings are finished, and they will be going out for estimations, and hopefully it'll come out well. And then the 100% drawings will go out to bid sometime in end of November, beginning of December. Mariah, yeah.
Thanks, Helen. My question is about the traffic around the site. I don't know if it's been brought up yet, but seems like the traffic that's both on School Street and Aspinwall in either direction is backing up even more than it ever did before. And it seems like it's providing or it's posing somewhat of a safety challenge for the different intersections. I was wondering if the building or if the transportation board or someone will be revisiting the traffic plan.
So the transportation board is in charge of the streets. They're the ones who determine if a street gets a narrowing or not. They agreed, I mean, what's going to be happening eventually is there'll be bike lanes and a bigger sidewalk for pedestrians on School Street. In the meantime, the traffic is backing up. My sense is that people will start to find other ways to avoid it, or they won't. I've been caught in it. The traffic light has been extended for that left turn and going straight, so that to hopefully help with the problem. That's as much as the project can deal with it. The rest is the
Can I just add
transportation board.
something, Helen?
Yeah.
'Cause I think a lot of it is T-board because
It all is, not just.
well, some of it might actually be the state when you get closer to Route 9, because almost simultaneous to School Street going down to one lane each direction, the bus lanes were added, so that there are convergences of cars from Harvard and Washington toward Route 9, but I don't think that those lights have been adjusted to account for there being one lane there instead of two, where you can turn left onto Route 9. And so that's also backing up. And so I think a lot of this is light cycles that hopefully they can look at and adjust some of the light cycles as well.
One of the things when we had the traffic consultants and they did their studies, they found that the greater majority of the traffic was coming from outside Brookline, using it as a cut through to the hospital areas. And so I think some of the hope was that they would find a different route to go to the hospital areas as opposed to going by School Street, because in addition to what we have now, eventually when the school is there, there will be two humps in the road and a light for students to go across the street to the playground. So it may even get slowed down
Right, I think
more.
when we discussed it in pedestrian advisory for the last 2.5, 3 years, it ranges all the way potentially even to become just a pedestrian walkway with no traffic. I'm not sure what the final decision is.
The transportation board did not agree to not having, to closing the street.
The issue with the speed bumps or traffic calming there might also be for first responding vehicles, ambulances and things like that.
I think they're going to be lower, they're not going to be the
What I'm
big
saying is
humps.
that that's the most direct route to the hospitals from that area, actually. So nobody wants them to have to go farther distances. So we're going to have to work that out. And there are, to Mariah's point, continuation of images being posted on social media.
Yeah, I've seen them.
About the backups, which will.
I think, they need to deal with the transportation board. That's not something that we have expertise or knowledge or ability, and it's not our jurisdiction.
Correct, yes.
So, but what is our jurisdiction is, wait a minute, Stephen, you had something you wanted to say? No? Okay. What is our jurisdiction are the historic plaster friezes that you see here that were at in the historic building at Pierce School. I can't remember the numbers of them. I think there's 17 of these, or maybe a little bit more.
16, I think.
16. Mariah helped me with the application,
Yeah,
so
that's
she
why I
knows.
know.
You can chime in at any time. So these freezes are work in with our teaching of Greek and Middle Eastern history in 6th grade. And since they are artifacts that we have in the school, we felt that it was really important to preserve them and restore them. So in order to do that, we did get them removed. There's a company in town, not in town, in Watertown actually, called Daedalus that refurbished the Supreme Court building and a number of other historic buildings, and also did the Elgin marble friezes that we have at the high school, because the owner of the company was a Pierce School parent. And his son, who now runs the company, was a Pierce School student. And so he is, the town has paid to remove them and store them with Daedalus. We are, Mariah has been very gracious to help me with the eligibility determination submission to the Community Preservation Act under Historic Preservation. And in order to, we actually were approved for eligibility pending the school committee vote tonight, hopefully, and also the Preservation Commission determining that this is a historic artifact that needs to be preserved. You have in your packet all the details, more than what you might ever want to read about these friezes. But I think it would be important for us to, I feel these sorts of things that have been in the schools, we got them in 1900, Mariah?
Ish, yeah.
And I just think these sorts of things are important to keep. And it's important for students to see these things, because when they go to Denmark and see the originals, they'll say, oh, I saw that. Or when students at the high school go to Greece to go to the Parthenon, they can say, ah, I'm familiar with that.
So would you like to make a motion?
And that was actually, I'm sorry, I'll go back 2 steps. That was Mr. Lincoln's purpose in bringing the Elgin marble friezes to the old Lincoln School. In that auditorium that you saw there with the statues, at the top, these were the ones that are presently in the high school and refurbished, were in the same condition that you saw here for these friezes. And we're sitting there. Nancy, Helen, and I at the time felt that it was really important to have them visible for the community, because they weren't really being seen much there. And that's how well, it's not that quick. We did some fundraising and got the Brookline Savings Bank, where Mr. Lincoln, who was a school committee member and was president of the Brookline Savings Bank. What was the point? Yeah, the Brookline Savings Bank funded the majority of the restoration. Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion on?
Sure, you don't want me to talk more about the history of the Brookline schools? Sure.
I read it.
So I'd like to request support and approval by the Brookline School Committee of our application for a Community Preservation Act funding for restoration and reinstallation of the historic friezes at the Pierce School.
Mariah, would you like the second?
Sure, but Helen, do we need to specifically say anything about having going to Preservation Commission?
No, because we are approving the application.
Just to apply.
We can't, they won't accept it without
No,
preservation.
but don't we need to, does the vote need to be also not just a support and approval of the application, but also support and approval or some sort of something to go to the Preservation Commission to seek that?
Okay, why don't we do it this
status?
way? Why don't we do support and approval of the district's application for the Community Preservation Act and for the
Seeking the
submission to
designation from
seeking
the
a,
pre- yeah.
yeah, historic designation from the Preservation Commission.
So these are like separate applications?
Yes.
They're two
Okay.
separate pieces, yeah. But we can do it as one vote, because if we don't approve it, nothing goes forward. If we approve it, then we have to go to preservation.
All right, is there any further discussion on this topic? Carolyn?
So I have two things I want to say, or a question. So when I'm looking at the CPA application process, step one is after coming up with an idea, after coming up with an idea and getting agreement from the owner, applicants, blah, blah, blah.
That's us.
Right. Then submit project eligibility determination form. And my understanding is that's already been done.
That's been done,
Right.
and they voted on it.
So
Pending.
I guess I'm surprised that I don't understand why we're only being asked for agreement now as school committee
Because
when
this
this
is
is
our first
already.
meeting of the year.
Okay, well, the CPA,
And that was due last week.
okay.
And I attended as your representative their eligibility determination meeting. And because I'm co-chair of the Peer School Project,
Yeah.
I felt that that would be okay. But
Okay.
you know, if you don't want to vote it, that's okay too.
So, well, my concern just is that sort of the process, and that we're hearing about it now, and the school department is the owner. And then also, just as a school committee member, and I've gone through this CPA voting plan, the CPA voting as a town meeting member. And the CPA can cover lots of community needs, housing, open space, cleaning up open space, cleaning up ponds, improving parks. So it's all a matter of prioritizing, ultimately for town meeting members to prioritize or not to prioritize because they're bundled. And last year at town meeting, there was a big discussion about whether certain CPA applications or projects could be taken out if people didn't want to vote them as a bundle, because some people liked some things and not others. So ultimately, there's a limited amount of money for the CPA to spend. And I think, so to advocate for cleaning up these freezes, it's not a matter of keeping them, we're keeping them. It's only a matter of cleaning them up. And without knowing what else is going to be included in the CPA that might seem more important to me, I would have trouble. And considering that we have 212 million public dollars being spent on the Pierce School, and now I don't feel comfortable as a school committee member asking the public to spend $60,000 more to clean up these freezes through the CPA. So I'm a preservationist. The freezers are cool. I'm glad they're being kept. I like the idea of cleaning them up. That's great, but it's not something that I feel I can advocate for spending that money in that context. So.
I think the one thing that you're mixing together, there are certain amounts of money set aside.
I
for
understand
historic
that.
Preservation.
Yep.
And the CPA will determine what makes sense. You have a right as a town meeting member to vote, and you have a right here to vote.
And to be clear, I'm describing, what will happen ultimately at town meeting. I am my opinion is as a school committee member, and I know the CPA can spend, a certain amount on public housing, a certain amount on parks or preservations. But again, I don't feel comfortable
It
advocating
has to spend a
for,
certain amount. It can't, I
right,
think those categories can't be moved, is my understanding.
and there'll be lots of applications.
Actually, from my understanding, there's enough to cover most of the applications already that have come in this year.
So as a school committee member, in the context of that we have $212 million being spent on the Pierce School, I don't feel comfortable asking to spend $60,000 more of taxpayer funds to clean up these freezes. So,
Thank you.
but I'm glad that they're being saved.
I think we are now ready for a vote unless anybody else would like to comment. All right, Jesse,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
No.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Mariah,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you all, and thank you for listening to this rather long report.
So that's it for capital?
Yeah.
All right.
I think so.
Very good. Next on our list is curriculum. Suzanne, I believe you wanted to hold curriculum until our next meeting.
Yes, if we could, please.
All right.
But also to remind people that we have the joint meeting on the 18th with finance to hear the school improvement plans.
All right. Sarah, DEIJ.
So we have a meeting coming up that we've already discussed a couple of times because it got canceled, and it's on October 9th. It's going to be an in-person meeting only, and this is when we're going to finally, if we are all comfortable doing it, do the case study. And this is the case study that's from Harvard Ed Ethics that are not the exact same case study that our teachers have done, but they have done other case studies from this same group. And my motivation, I just sort of wanted to bring it up again because there was a little bit of email activity after, was that when we are discussing issues that have a lot of values that people hold that might not, not be same from a member to another member, they might even be competing, we as a school committee, come to consensus anyway, right? We discuss things and we figure it out even though we might have different values. So I wanted to say that that is kind of the experience that we would be doing by doing this case study. And everybody's welcome to come. It's a subcommittee meeting that those of us who are on the subcommittee will commit to being at.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Next we have finance. Mariah.
Hi. So a brief report on our summer activities. The end of the fiscal year, there was the discussion of the reserve fund transfer that was handled very well by the finance team. So thank you, finance team. And then we met in August to discuss, I actually think it was the end of July, to discuss policy. But ultimately, we've decided to defer further conversation of the policy update until the spring, once we get through the budget. So that's been put on hold. And then we had a meeting 3 weeks ago or so where we discussed some other finance topics, including the calendar and the first draft of the budget guidelines. And we also looked at sort of Susan gave a really great presentation talking about sort of the expectations of finance subcommittee. So that was all very helpful. I did want to give a quick update on the accounts payable because I haven't had the chance to report since the middle of May because of our summer recess. So for the balance of FY24, so end of May through the end of June, there was $3,443,807.57 in approval of different charges, and nothing particularly struck me as unusual. And since the beginning of the fiscal year, there was $4,403,575 even of expenses. That's through tomorrow because I went today to sign tomorrow's. And again, it's kind of interesting to me that there hasn't been anything particularly unusual. And and so it seems pretty straightforward, a lot of expenses for transportation and for the food services, and just sort of the standard stuff. So nothing unusual to report.
All right, thanks, Mariah. Next, we have government relations. So that subcommittee now consists of Helen, Suzanne, and me. We'll be meeting on the 19th. It'll be a brief meeting just to consider which town meeting warrant articles will come up to the school committee for discussion. I believe it's the 19th, yeah, week from today. Short meeting, fully remote. All right, policy, Stephen.
Okay, so we met twice this summer. I think you heard about our first meeting with MASC. We had our last meeting August 19th, I think, with a number of school principals who gave us a lot of very helpful advice on what areas the policy subcommittee could helpfully consider to provide guidance and or clarity to them as school principals and building leaders. A couple of things. One, so based on their input, based on a list of policies that we've partially considered previously, and based on MASC's guidance that we fully review our entire backlog of policies over as expeditious a period as we can manage, I've put together a master calendar for the next year that integrates those three objectives. Not the entire policy manual, just a subsection of that, with the intention of making it public so that interest groups and various stakeholder groups could join in the deliberation and help us deliberate to make sure these policies are responsive, are excellent, and so on. Before I share it out, I want to review it with you first, Dr. Guillory, to make sure it meets with your needs, and then I want to review it with the subcommittee members. And then, Betsy, I want to discuss with you how best it could be disseminated. The one basic idea is that not to bite off too much per session, but that there's a lot of work done between sessions. So I've divided all the sessions up ideally into 3 blocks, 2 main working blocks, and 1 small additional block where we don't get a lot done, but hopefully we could take on some small piece. So with the idea that all the subcommittee meetings will be 1 hour 40 minutes going forward, sorry for that additional 10 minutes. So we can have 2 40-minute blocks to take on some bigger piece and then a 20-minute block at the end. Our next meeting is September 23rd. Is that right, Betsy? I think that's right. Loosely docketed is going to be the first section for review, which is sneak preview, is going to be section J of our policy manual, which has some really meaty stuff in it. One area that was recommended by school principals that I won't discuss just yet because I want to discuss it with you first, Dr. Guillory, but it's an area of interest to the principals where they've already started a good deal of work. And I also want to spend some time discussing some work strategies for us as a policy subcommittee so we could figure out how we want to divide and conquer tasks and make them more and more boring. So that's my goal. That's it.
All right, thank you, Stephen. We can move to additional liaisons and updates.
So I'll just also say that there's plenty of open slots in the master calendar too. So if it's not totally blocked, so we can still accommodate issues as they arise.
Yeah, I mean, every year things do come up that seem to
so-
suggest the writing of new policies or the revision of old ones.
Yeah, I tried to leave about a quarter of the blocks unfilled.
Stephen, can you share some of what it was a great meeting, by the way, so kudos to Stephen for engaging the principals. I thought it was really interesting, and I really appreciated having their input and insight. Can you share, off the top of your head, some of what they were talking about?
Sure. I thought that I captured 4 main areas that they were recommending we take up. Betsy captured it in 6. So I'll try to say what I remember. They recommended that we take up a mobile device policy. That's new. We haven't had that before. They recommended that we consider building security. That was important to them. And a subsection of that could be a reconsideration of our SRO policy. They were interested in our, here, I have it down, hang on. An attendance policy, that was something that they wanted guidance on. They wanted more information or clarity on staffing for after-school programs, which I thought dovetailed nicely with a few other priorities that have either been part of a policy draft or what we've talked about, supporting after school, for instance. How does that work with building access? It doesn't necessarily just have to be about, are the doors open or closed to parents in the morning? That could be a broader policy. But again, before I docket something like that, I want to discuss it with Dr. Guillory, what should and shouldn't be included. They also talked about possibly updating graduation requirements, but that sounds so ambitious that I don't know whether it's appropriate to be under policy or whether that, Andy, needs to be something that you decide where it really belongs, if that's part of something that's above policy, closer to vision and goals. I don't know. Betsy, is there anything that you captured outside that? I think you put it as staffing for after-school programs also. That to me also could be part of a broad building access policy too. Go ahead.
Where are we on this question of which, if any, handbooks require school committee
Sure.
review?
So handbooks are, what we're required to do is we're required to update the general handbook in section J, which is one of the areas that I've prioritized for our review this year. The letter of the law says that we have to review any policy that comes through, including anything that comes out of K-8s. But the way we talked a lot about the issue of process by which the school, whoever we are, the school committee, is able to fulfill its duty of reviewing and approving any building-based policy, which is one that we haven't really exercised in the past. But to do so without causing an undue burden on the leaders who may need to tweak policies here and there. So this turned into a conversation about how to do it for the high school versus how to do it for the K-8s. So Val helpfully sent around the statute. Val, did you have any update on your interpretation of that statute?
I didn't take a deeper look at it. Sorry, Stephen.
Okay, we're required to review it all. But the K-8s, the way they do it is they really just compile and aggregate versus generating new policy as BHS does. So it's a bit of a different assignment for BHS. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, yeah. It was a confusing discussion.
Yeah, it was a complicated conversation.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Just one thing. So in the past, when high school graduation requirements changed, because it used to be gym 4 years and English 4 years, and that was it. That was pre-ed reform. It went to curriculum, we went over it, and then it came to the school committee for a vote. So I would suggest that might be a way that we might
That sounds reasonable to me too.
deal with it.
So Suzanne, maybe that's a suggestion from the principals you want to take up on the curriculum subcommittee, instead of it starting at policy, is looking at graduation requirements with OTL.
Sure. Is Jody nodding her head?
Now it's not.
I'll talk to Jody about it. We'll talk about it.
That makes sense to me also.
Is there overlap with portrait of graduate and?
Yeah, I think curriculum can grapple with all that and figure out, it makes sense to do portrait of graduate and then do the requirements afterwards, but we may need to do some requirements sooner. I don't know. I don't know if the state has changed anything, but we can talk about that in curriculum, which I won't be.
I'd like to thank our members who represented us at Brookline Day recently. Would anybody who was there like to talk about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. spent more time there than I signed up for, and then spent the next hour and a half walking up and down. There was a lot of excitement from people coming by, and these stickers were very, very popular. We held them out right in front of people so they couldn't miss them. And a lot of former students and current students and their parents came by too. There was just a ton of energy around it, so it was very nice. It was just a popular place for people to stop by.
I'll add that I think that Jesse is an excellent salesperson for PSB. And I thought our Bibs, Mariah, was a hit.
Yes.
So I retract my grimaces from all those times you brought it up at all those meetings.
I feel so vindicated right now.
Okay. Great.
And thanks to Betsy for organizing the effort there.
Making it happen.
Yeah.
And then those hours that I spent there, I think
No.
there was one grievance, and that was the quality of our BHS scoreboard. But everyone else had just questions and praise, and so it was a really nice vibe the whole time. And yeah, Betsy, thanks for all the organization and logistical support.
Betsy, excuse me, you set it up. You had everything there. You ordered everything. You did everything, and thank you.
And I would just add that Mariah's daughter Rita was a big energy source for about 2 hours, coming back to us. Anytime we turned our head from forward, she would pipe up and say, "Stay focused."
Yeah, we got it.
You had
Got it
Rita
a
there
couple
too.
times,
Yeah. She made sure. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Any other liaison reports and updates?
Yeah. I had the opportunity to, after a couple schedule changes, meet with Sigal Reese in my capacity as liaison with Department of Public Health. And we had a wonderful hour together. And we already knew each other from other PFAS and other topics in town. But in this context, we spent a good amount of time speaking about substance abuse within the district and some of the plans and programs that they have around that. We certainly touched on the topic for a while of cell phone policy and electronic devices. And she pointed out to me that, and then I heard later from parents and things, that across many of the schools, apparently there were directives given by the building leaders on day one of school about their own handcrafted policies for cell phones and electronic devices. Even in the 4th and 5th grade, I know at Hayes now, they're dropping their smartwatches off and whatever things else they have in a bag when they get into class. That's good. It may help our policy subcommittee, Stephen, since there'll be these things going on. In fact, we did a walk by the Driscoll School as part of pedestrian advisory Monday night, and I met a woman, Nicole, who's a parent at Driscoll on the PTO, I think. She's working with a team of parents to write a cell phone policy for Driscoll. So, I mean, it's coming out of the woodwork now as people all, I think, come in agreement that these devices don't belong in school. Scott and I also talked about community education, both within the school and within the entire community. And we touched on the topic for a bit about SROs as well, how important it would be to have them back in the schools for so many positive reasons. Given the push on how to get to school, we talked about safe routes to school and biking safety. SROs also could be useful in teaching kids and staff if they'd like a refresher on biking safely and making sure kids whose parents want them to bike to school on their own do so in a safe manner. And we covered already the asbestos abatement thing, and we talked about nursing and the immunizations programs for kids from families who need to get those immunizations perhaps within the school, within the nurse's office. And so it was a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground, and we'll just continue to meet on a regular basis. I'll be attending their meetings starting, I think the first one is the end of this month, early October.
All right, thank you. That sounds like a very crowded hour.
Yeah, we all met, yeah.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
Helen.
Did they happen to talk about COVID shots for, no?
It didn't come up.
Because I was wondering about the new COVID shot and whether we were, in the past, they've been very good about giving it
we
to the
didn't.
community.
Just didn't come up during the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll give a quick update. I met in my capacity as the liaison with the BEF. I met with the new Executive Director, Kim Barnum, and Jenny Rothman. So that was very, very nice, not as eventful as Jesse's conversations. Kim seems amazing. I had no idea her fabulous background or that she's my neighbor. We can practically see each other's houses, apparently. I'll be attending their first board meeting and mostly, I think, just observing the awesome work that the BEF does. But that was exciting to meet the new director.
Who is a former teacher in the school?
Yes.
Just, okay.
A former teacher and a former like coach of like the mentor to the mentors. So her words were that this executive director job is her dream job on steroids. So, and she was extremely gracious, and I appreciated their time.
Great. Well, thank you both for those meetings and for continuing to attend those further meetings of those organizations. All right. Is there any new business? I see none. So that means that I will move to meet an executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the BEU Unit A grievance, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. And purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from the following meeting, July 29th, 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, let's vote. Jesse.
Aye.
Sarah.
Yes.
Stephen. Helen.
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Val.
Yes.
Mariah.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. We will not be returning to open session. Good night, everyone.
Recording stopped.